following live broadcast is rated ESV even though sometimes we go towards a hard R. Good evening, everybody. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about actor portrayals, when it's okay to portrayal, as well as woke casting that some people are seeing as a problem. Some people are okay with it. And we're here to get your opinions and talk about it, find out what you think about it. You can be completely honest with us, no matter which direction you're on. We want to hear you. We want that argument, because it's all about people having different voices and people being heard, and that's what we're here for. You guys ready?
Sure.
All right, good enough.
Let's go.
So black people can play white parts. Straight people can play gay characters. Gay characters no longer allowed to play any kind of straight role. White people can never take the role of a black person. Any Asians can't. Females cannot take predominantly male roles, and males cannot take any role that they have to dress in a different part to fulfill that role. And it goes on and on. And that is what I'm here for today, because one of the things that's going on in today's world is an act of, some people call it wokeism, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a step in the right direction. The truth is, a lot of what I said sounds ridiculous, and it sounds stupid to even say such a thing. But that's what happens, and that's the arguments and anger that gets in some people's minds when you try to create equality via inequality, where it's okay for one and not the other, and you go to the extreme in the other direction. But is it really harmful? Is it really bad? We're going to find out on tonight's show. Don't forget, while you're here, to like, share, subscribe, and follow Your Shoulder Voice on Meta, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're on all those. We bring you new shows every Wednesday, and every Sunday we have our open forum shows here. But this show is not playing the... there we are. Playing the part. Wrong show title there. All right, so playing the part. Should age, race, gender, or sexuality play a part in actor portrayals? Is it harming, hurting, or doing good for the community? We're going to find out. Well, but we can't do that without panelists, so let's bring them in. All right, our first panelist tonight, please welcome back Jane. How you doing, Jane?
I'm doing great, Keith. How are you doing?
I am absolutely amazing. So, really quickly, obviously you heard the intro to this, and you being, you are a trans woman. So, out of curiosity, how do you feel in general about this? Do you think it's possibly something we've taken a step too far, or it does go too far, or is it needed and we haven't gone far enough?
I feel as though, in a lot of cases, I think of it as a necessary case. In other ways, I see it as though industry can use it as a tool for a step actually in the wrong direction, and kind of muddles the whole importance of diversity in the film industry.
You're also into making movies and do that as well. Is that something that you look for when you're making movies? Is that a big priority for you right now, or are you not at that point yet?
Depending on the films that I do, I try my best to make my characters genderless, so that way I can try to find someone who actually just fits the characteristics that I want for my roles. But that does change depending on the films that I'm making.
That's, I think, where a lot of people, get some of the anger and upset, is that it changes and you need somebody of a specific gender, or specific race, or, something, because you want your film to stand out that way instead of on the merit and the quality of the film. But we'll get into more of that in a minute. So let's bring in our next guest, or panelist, not even guest, our panelist. Please welcome back Bill. Bill, what's going on?
Oh, I'm going crazy, but...
You're always going crazy, Bill, but that's how we like you.
All my goddaughters are watching, so...
I saw that. They're on here watching you right now. So, you got to behave yourself for them.
Oh, I'm just waiting for one of them to tell me to put the cigarette down, so...
Oh, they don't even know that. Well, they're going to be saying that a lot during this show, probably. So how do you feel about, you're the oldest one here, so you've seen a lot of movies be remade and changed and altered in different ways. Does it affect you? Do you think that is an issue? Do you think there's sometimes taken away from your favorite films?
It's the whole thing. Some of the stuff happened back, and I'm going to go right into the comic books.
That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
Captain Marvel, and then Captain Marvel wasn't a man anymore, but it was something that was passed down and changed. There was way back, and I tried to look for it. And Keith might know something about this because Jane was saying something about making your characters genderless. This guy made a short film, and I don't remember what all it had to do about, but his characters were worms. Which worms, I guess you would call them genderless, kind of, because
Yeah.
they have both sexes.
Right.
And I tried to find it, but I don't even remember what it was called or anything. Like I said, it was just a short 15-minute skit. But like I said, there's stuff. I think there's points and times when it's okay to change the gender and stuff like that. But sometimes I think it doesn't work.
I can understand that, and that's kind of how I am. Like sometimes I think it is a good idea, but sometimes it doesn't work. But one of our next panelist, our next guest, is one who definitely knows when things work and things don't. He is a very well-known film critic out there, and he is also a film nerd and a film buff. So we've definitely got covered with him, and we want his opinion. How you doing, Jeremy?
Hello, hello.
Or Chrono? We'll call you Chrono. How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing fantastic. Still the unemployed thing, but hey, whatevs.
Hey, everyone's. A lot of people have ridden that road lately in the last few years. They've been up and down through that. It's crazy, but I hope you definitely find something soon out there. So you heard me talking. I know you are a movie critic out there, and you review a lot of films. The question that I have for you is: do you think that you could rate some movies higher or lower based on the basic casting regarding race, age, gender, or sexuality?
It really all depends on how, what's the theme of the story? How important are those elements, those identifying elements are? So for example, if a movie at its core, like the movie Aloha with Emma, was it Emma Stone? Where she supposedly played Aloha, where she supposedly played a Pacific, a native Hawaiian, but she's like the whitest of the white. That's a problem, But at the same time, how important are those identifiers to the narrative, and where I'm finding problem is when all of a sudden there's the tokenism where it's shoehorned in that plays absolutely no part in the grand scheme of things. That's where I have a problem.
On the side of it, we talked about that a little bit too. Jacqueline says, "What are you drinking, old man?" Obviously referring to Bill on there.
Big Jack, be quiet. Shut up. I drink what I want. Just so you know, the three women that chimed in on this, they're all sisters. They're all 6 feet tall. They all weigh 200 pounds. They're muscle heads, and they're meat as hell to me sometimes. So,
well, I want to say welcome to Jackie, Ashley, and Connie, as well as anybody else who's watching on here. Feel free to engage us during the chat. Any questions you have, we respond to you live, and we just love talking to you. You are the driving force behind the show. All right. So, what is your biggest problem? Actually, I'm going to refrain from that question first. Between Jay and Kronos, Jane, you have, obviously you being a transgender woman, Kronos, you being, I'm guessing, I'm not good at this, so Asian American, I'm going to say, or Asian just period, or Filipino, I don't care. But I'm just not good at it. Have you ever felt offended or bothered by the people who have portrayed different roles in movies? Has it ever personally affected you? Do you thought this needs to happen?
I can't think of offhand. I can't think of anything. Gosh.
What about you, Jane? Well, he's thinking. Okay, so this is like really a deep thought. Want me to get back to this one in a minute if you have?
Yeah.
well,
Okay,
you
go ahead.
have the most recent thing I've heard of lately is Yellowstone is on Paramount. All right, and it's really popular. Kevin Costner's son is married to a Native American woman. The Native American woman is played by an Asian American woman, actually. And she has went out public saying that, oh, I'm part Indian, I'm this and that. And the people of the Indian nation don't like that at all because they know she's not.
That's what, and you know what? It's so hard nowadays to find when you're doing movies about specific sexualities or specific cultures or races or anything like that. It's so hard to find people that are strictly that race, no matter what or culture or sexuality. You've got a mix out there. You've got such a mix out there that it's hard to say this person's got to be this to play this part. How do you handle
Well,
that when making a movie? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
The problem they had with that is part of the show is a Indian reservation. There are all American Indians in the show, but because she's a main character, and because she came out and said, "Well, yes, I'm part Indian, I'm part this and that," that's why the tribes had the problem with the whole situation.
Is she?
She's not.
Huh? Well,
She's
then
Asian
that's a
American.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a problem if she's misrepresenting things.
It's actually TMZ didn't talk about it on their show, but on their web show or whatever, it was commented a little bit, and some of the news stations have reported it because of the tribes out in that area and stuff like that live on the reservations, everything like that. They're watching the show because it's about their area and stuff like that, and of course they search her up, and find out about her, and she's not. So.
But does that take away from the show? I mean, I get that the Native Americans are bitching about it as being their culture. Does that actually take away from it, Jane?
Well, for me, to refer back to your previous question,
Okay.
When it comes to the LGBT community, or even specifically the trans community, I kind of think of a lot of previous instances, I guess I can put it, of queer coding or messaging stating that trans people are this type of evil or monstrous type of factor. The best way I can use as an example is horror films. You can think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Silence of the
Psycho,
Lambs,
Sleepaway
Psycho.
Camp. Yep, Slow Bill. The prominent role for a trans person, or for a trans character rather, at the time was being played by usually a straight man, playing this idea of some person in drag, or this woman who is this psycho or this killer or this evil entity, which is something that's not very easily identifiable, to say the least, for especially like a young trans person or a trans filmmaker, and especially in the horror community. It becomes a very difficult situation, at least back in the day. Now we have certain situations, say like movies like The Danish Girl, or even just a couple years back, the issue with Scarlett Johansson, possibly playing a trans person.
Why is so? Does that bother you that she's considered for the role?
I don't think she's even considered for the role anymore. I don't even remember what it is anymore, to be perfectly honest with you. At the time it did, mainly because there wasn't a lot of really good trans representation with trans actors. The best thing I can think of in the past couple of years is probably Euphoria through HBO.
So let me ask you a question then about that. If you, as a movie director, and you're doing casting or whatever, and you are finding, you're trying to decide between two people. One is to play a trans role. One is trans. Not the best actor, but can pull it off, let's say. And one is a straight person that is not trans or anything. I'm sorry, straight with sexuality, but is not trans, cis man, cis woman. Or I don't know the proper terms necessarily. It goes everywhere, but you know what I'm saying. But is far more talented and can nail that role. Who do you put in?
Let me put it this way, and maybe. Well, this is how I'll put it. Okay, as a director, and this is how I think a lot of directors should probably do it. But who am I to say?
A director,
right? But for me, as a director, something that I think is important is representation. So say that the role that I have is for a trans character, I'm going to look for the trans actor. And I think something important with that is it doesn't really matter what kind of resume an actor has. If they have that kind of professionalism, if they have that kind of trust that I know that they're going to come to work on time and give me the best that they can and be willing to communicate and work with me. My job as a director is to see what 100% they can give me as an actor and push another 15, 20, 25% out of them as best as I can while keeping in time,
Okay.
while making sure that my actor is comfortable, while making sure that my crew is comfortable. It's a challenging endeavor.
So you would go with the trans person though over the non-trans, correct? Is basically is what you're gonna,
If it's supposed to be a trans character, yes. But
as
that's something
something
that
as something that Jeremy had said earlier. How do you respond to that, Jeremy, when you're looking at a movie, knowing somebody would have been suited better for the role?
It depends
I'm
completely
going
on
to
the
get back to
mission.
that, Connie.
It depends completely on the mission, the statement. What are they trying to say with the movie? Um, if it's a story told about the trans experience or the Asian experience or whatnot, and they choose to hire someone that isn't a part of that, that is such a slap in the face when there are actors out there that are capable of portraying it. Whether or not, sure, maybe Scarlett Johansson can squeeze out just a little bit better tears, but her not being Asian overshadows, I mean, like like the feed, the.
But they're playing I guess what I'm referring to a little bit more is not necessarily a story. I do believe that if you're writing a movie that has to do with being trans, or has to do with being gay or coming out or something like that, or has to do with being Asian, where that is the key focus of the movie, yes, I can agree with that. But I'm talking about just a movie where a character happens to be that.
Is it important to the core of the character? And that's the thing. And if it is important to the core of the character, then at every step, I really think they should try and go for someone that represents that community.
let me put it this way. I can use another good example, though a bit comedic, one that I kind of don't want to use, but I think is a good enough example. But in the Shrek movies, the DreamWorks films, there's a character that Larry King plays. I think it's supposed to be like the godmother, like supposed to be a parody of like the godmother from Cinderella. Um, and it's supposed to be a woman, but it's Larry King. It's just Larry King's voice. I can understand that that is supposed to be done as a parody and not something that's supposed to misrepresent the trans community. Uh, Now, let's say something like Scarlett Johansson or another cisgendered woman uh, goes to play a trans woman, even though they have really great acting credentials or have a lot of great star power to their name. Uh, I, as a trans woman, I'm going to have a hard time as looking at Scarlett Johansson as a face for uh, transness in the film industry and in movie theaters, if that makes sense.
Okay,
I got a
now,
question
yeah, go ahead, Bill.
because I don't know. So in Hollywood, honestly, and I'm asking this, and there's no disrespect anywhere, because I'm going with what Jane was saying. How many transgender actors, or even gay actors, are there that are out there that are good actors?
That are open. I would
One
say,
of the
at least.
problems with Hollywood, is that they don't give those people a chance. And there is a community out there of actors that may be perfectly capable, but Hollywood being Hollywood would much rather hire the name recognition than someone that
Well,
would.
yeah, because they want the actor that's already recognized. But like I
Right.
said, I mean, you can. All right, let's go into this. I just go real quick and then let Keith do it. Way back, all right, the second Darren from Bewitched and Fanny Flagg, who used to be on Match Game all the time, they appeared on a show called Tattletales, and it was about couples and what they knew about each other. And they appeared together because they were both gay, and they did not come out. but they were asked to be on the show, and instead of telling the producers or the directors or whatever who was running the show, well, I can't do that, I'm gay, they got each other to do it together with each other. And I think part of it has to do with the fact, and that was a long time ago, is if you're not going to come out and tell who you are, if you're a good actor, then they're not going to know what kind of roles they ought to put you into.
I don't think it should. They say that your sexuality and stuff shouldn't make a difference in being for any job. You fight that there's no discrimination against your sexuality. So if you can do the job and play the part, I don't see why there's an issue. I kind of get what you're saying with the backstory and having to make it believable, and I guess that does apply when it comes to, biographies, heavy drama, stuff like that are really trying to bring the point home. But what is wrong with casting star power? Because you get your movie seen. I'm going to go back to a movie that originally brought this up a year ago. I want to get to the movie first. And it was The Prom. And The Prom, James Corden got a lot of flack because he's not gay and played a gay character. And the lead in it got flack because, or no, she was praised because she was a trans girl. Or she was trans. And she was playing a gay character, which is not the same thing, still miscasting. But it has star power like Meryl Streep and the one I just said, even though James Corden isn't necessarily a superstar, but it had names people recognize, and it got people to see the movie. So what is wrong with casting star power to get your movie and story seen and heard? If you do nobody's going to watch the movie, or very few will. The ones who will are already feeling that way.
Yeah, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, because the whole thing is you're going to make the movie how you see fit, right? So that you get the most people to come see it, so you make the most money. That's what making movies is about, unfortunately.
But a lot of it. Oh, go ahead, Jen. Go ahead.
To be quite honest and to be as respectful as I can, I think that idea of mentality of going straight towards the idea of star power, in the end of the day, is it can be kind of like lazy casting. Personally, whether or not Hollywood does that, you take that as you will. But there is something very important that I think a lot of people have to understand with the industry as well. First thing that you have to understand is there's going to be people that are looking for producers. And whatever the producer kind of really wants for a film is kind of what really has to happen, kind of the guidelines for something, because it's their money on the line, right? Like an investment. With that is going to come looking for a director and looking for a whole production team and looking for people to cast the movie. That's going to go with a director's vision, and that's going to go with a producer and a whole production team giving that kind of yes to a whole casting crew to go find those actors. And they have a certain type of list, right? Let's take the first It movie, right? So it makes sense to get Finn Wolfhard, who, even though he was getting a little older at the time, but he was big and famous from Stranger Things at the time, right? And even now, even still, Stranger Things is so popular with the new season coming out, right? And he has star power name. But he makes sense playing the role as a kid in the beginning of the It movies, right? It wouldn't make any type of sense, and this is the kind of issue that we talk that people always have made comments in the past, right? Of the idea of adults playing teenagers that are obviously adults and stuff, even though that's a whole different matter. That kind of stuff makes sense, right? When it comes
that's based on your experience of acting, though. A lot of times when they do stuff like that, that's not based on any of those for the race.
Well, here's the thing: when you go in for a casting, there's two ways of how it's being handled. You either have a clean slate for a character, but you need to find someone that has these type of innate abilities and characteristics. On the other hand, let's say I want to put a trans woman into the film. That's going to be put on the requirements for that casting. So let's say that I'm a Hollywood actor, right? And I put in my casting that I have a trans woman and they have to be a trans actor, right? Sir Patrick Stewart could come through the room and he could do a fantastic performance, as Sir Patrick Stewart could. But the thing about Sir Patrick Stewart is that Sir Patrick Stewart is not a trans woman, to my knowledge, and has no idea what that kind of experience is, right? He's not someone that's kind of fit for that role. And that's something that's being put transparently and communicated to casting, to agents, and to actors when making film.
Then, but what is the point of acting then if you're going to cast all people that have the experience for the role you're producing?
There's
Corona.
a there's a huge part of it, and at its core for me is about representation. Because at the end of the day, um, if those and I've mentioned it before, if those particular elements do not factor in to the core of the narrative, then sky's the limit. Hire the best actor. Um, but again, if it's important that it's a story from, like, for if Shang-Chi, the Marvel movie
Right.
was casted by, you know a white guy that they decided to tan, I would have been so freaking offended, because
Right.
the core of the Asian experience, with Asian lore, as weirdly defined as it may be, is it that is important to the core of the
It
character.
is. I want to ask a question then. Why is it okay to have people that were predominantly white portrayed now by black people in movies, or Asians, or other genders there, or
Okay.
sex, or genders, as he said with Captain Marvel? Why is that okay then?
Can you
If
give an
you're
It
saying,
example of just
has
just
happened
I'm doing
forever.
well, you got the whole show
It's
of
happened.
Hamilton, so you can
Yeah.
start there.
but with
Well,
Hamilton,
if
but
you go way
Oh,
back,
go ahead. Wait, Bill, go ahead.
The Seven Samurai was Japanese film, and we put it into two different movies here in America. It was the Magnificent Seven, and then they cut part of it off and went into um, the Red Sun.
How you doing, Thrasher? He's pulling up a chair because the action's starting. Uh, how you doing, Thrasher? Good to see you. I'll get back to your other comment in a minute. Go ahead, Bill.
But the Seven Samurai was one of the greatest movies ever made, like I said, but it was Japanese. We had subtitles over here when you watched it way back, and it was in black and white. And they actually brought the man over there who was in Seven Samurai over here, and we did the Magnificent Seven. And then after that, he did the Red Sun with Charles Bronson. And I can't remember his name, but he's passed away not too long ago. But like I said, he was a big actor over there. But you change genre to make it work for where it's at, I guess, sometimes. So
Yeah. And I don't mind when I say, by the way, and Atlanta Thrasher gives an example of Kingpin in the Daredevil movie too. I don't mind. First of all, I think Kingpin was awesome. I can't think of his name now, but Green Mello. I love
Michael
that
Clark
character.
Duncan.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. I love that actor, and I don't think it was a bad move. But if that had happened the other way, you're saying you'd be offended. Jane might be offended, or somebody else would be offended by doing that. Why is that okay to change that character? Because what's going to happen, I believe, eventually in this future, it'll spiral out. That character will be a predominantly black character. If another movie comes out and they replace it with white, it's going to be hell because people are going to
But
know that character.
but the
Let
thing
me.
is, oh, I was just gonna say real quick, Jane. The Like, when the Kingpin example, his race factors absolutely nothing into his character. Not just because he's the problem is, and it's a lot of it has to do with the representation, is that 95% of the time, and this is unfortunately a societal thing, we have unintentionally always imagine white, and that's the problem.
I'm
And
not saying
now we're
that's. I agree. Go ahead. I just want to
Mhm.
say I'm not arguing that fact. I know we have. I'm just
in a
saying.
way, but when you're going from comic book and the character's this, and then you put it on film and it's that, all the people that read the comic books and everything like that, someone's always going to have something to say. I'm just saying.
Right, no matter what you do. I want to go.
I'm
If we
not
can
saying
take
it's
one
wrong.
break,
I'm just saying.
if we can take one break on that, I want Jane had something to say. I want to make sure she gets it out. Go ahead, Jane.
No, it's accurate to that. And I guess it's kind of backed up with what Bill's saying here. Something that I think is important, that I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding, is that when you convert one story from one medium into another, it's going to be adapted and changed because it's a whole different team that's working on it. You're going to have hopefully people who worked on it previously. But say right now, someone wants to make the Iliad, right? Well, you hope to God that they're going to stay to the Iliad, but who the hell's going to keep up on that, right? Everyone who wrote the Iliad's been dead, you know? So you're going to have people who understand the story that's going to want it, but it's going to be different people interpreting it all the time. So with Kingpin, for the example, right? Kingpin stands for these few couple principles that are necessary for the character. Now, it just so happened that the actor that they chose fit the characteristics that they needed, right? That is something different than, say, a story about like Martin Luther King, right?
Well,
You want
again, when you're doing biographies, there's a huge difference. I'm not saying that, yes, if you're casting Martin Luther King, it absolutely should be a black person playing Martin Luther King. Without question, you're doing a biography about a real character that existed. But when you're talking about Alexander Hamilton, what do? And everybody thinks it's amazing because it's such a diverse cast. Why?
So when it comes to Alexander Hamilton, the biggest thing is the intention and the message that Lin-Manuel was trying to go with. He was basically using the he wanted to tell the black experience, or the other experience, through that lens, and so taking characters that may or may not have been white, it's just
But
that made sense.
that's a double standard. That defeats the
the-
argument that was just given by Jane, was the fact that I'm going to pick them because they went through this, even though they may not be the best actor. And now you're saying, well, wait, they fit that premise, they fit that acting job. So yes, that was right to do because I wanted to tell it from a different perspective, pretending everybody was. Well, that's a double standard.
Well, no,
that's
that-
what I don't get.
that goes back again to what I'm saying about the idea of different interpretation. We can all agree that those characters from Hamilton the musical are not supposed to be a transparent representation of Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. This is a whole story. Exactly. So for those characters to be playing by non-white roles, it creates a different type of message about, yes, the founding fathers, but also the foundation of America not being just from these politicians that created the Declaration of Independence and lived in like these eloquent houses and went into these different meetings. It was also formed by immigrants and the natives that had lived before.
I get that, but again, everything you're describing right now, Jane, has to do with actually writing a biographical film. Okay, so I do agree you should have some kind of relation to the topic when you're doing a biographical film of some kind. So I agree with that. Whether it happens to be your race or it happens to be your sexuality or your gender or anything like that. I do believe that that's important. What I don't understand is when it's reversed. I mean, shouldn't we tell Roots through a white perspective?
Fine. I mean,
you're fine with it, but do you think the world would be?
Story. But the thing is, if artistically, if the story is told and done right, then if it's, I mean, how many times have we seen retellings from different perspectives?
Okay,
it's just, if yes, it would be problematic. It would be problematic, but at the same time, if done properly or well, then yes, it makes sense.
And and that's what I'm trying to say mostly is that it's the way people will react to it. Not necessarily it wouldn't be good. I want to get to Atlanta's comment really quick if I can, because he brings up a fantastic point on this. It says, in my diversity class in college, we were taught that white people have zero culture, saying that any other person can fit into the role of a white person because there's nothing to replace. He also ends that with, FYI, I don't agree with this. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's the case as being an Asian? How do you feel about that?
So I had thinking about something that similarly, it really does boil down to the idea of representation, and it's something that I was going back. I mentioned earlier, the idea that within Hollywood, within the popular media, 95% of the time, the representation, whether intentional or unintentional, is always going to be white. Whether that be cis white, and while inherently that isn't a problem on a grander scale, when you start thinking about on an individual level, what does that mean? So, saying, for example, you look at like, say, like a hero like James Bond. Inherently his whiteness doesn't affect anything.
Correct.
But because you see yourself reflected in that, and by you I mean anyone other than white, you have no problem. You have your hero, you root, yes, and on a universal level, that is very true. Even I can see that on a universal level, how great that, that's the kind of hero I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But the power comes in when all of a sudden James Bond looks like me. If James Bond looked like an Asian man and he was the hero and he was the most important thing, the most powerful, growing up, that would have been so powerful to me, making me feel that I could have done anything.
This is going to seem racist, but what about stuff like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and all that?
And
I mean,
that's
are
the
they
thing.
not heroes you look into?
No, but that's the thing. In those days, it made sense, and they were heroes in many ways. But when you're talking about a grander Hollywood scheme, there's still a hint of white centralism, in that they were always the other, and so when you look at it and you think about, go ahead, I'm sorry, you're gonna.
No, I was just in
Well,
to what you're saying. You're right in what you see and how you as an individual would feel, with your heroes, or a black child might feel to his black heroes, etc. Nobody thinks that you're also taking away the hero of white people who say, I guess I shouldn't have liked that, it was the wrong thing. You're still taking away, maybe not as harsh because we don't have the same experiences. We have other experiences as well. But you're still taking that hero aspect away from white culture. So is that better?
well,
I mean,
the
when you're
thing is,
changing, you
listen,
use James Bond. If you're changing it, then, all the white people, all the white kids.
When did James Bond come out? When did it come out?
Oh my god!
When did
Oh my
Ian Fleming
god! Oh my
write?
god!
When did he write the book? You know how long ago that was? All right.
Oh,
Yes.
not
So a
James
point in
Bond,
time, not saying anything against anybody, either way, all right. They used a white man because he was in England, all right, or whatever you want to call it over to Britain, right? That's what was
I'll get
going
the
on, and
Connie's
that
comment.
was the people who were actually the secret agents. There were no other people
Yes,
and stuff like that at that point in time. And
that's
that's why they went with that and kept going with that. So
yes, but despite that, regardless of that, his whiteness doesn't factor in to his characterization. It's just by virtue of the fact that he's
It
in
kind of
Europe,
does because
England.
that was the
And-
culture there. I mean
I-
that was the
but you're
general
also
race.
talking about the time frame. There's a difference between me seeing a movie from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I understand completely that those were very different times. If we're talking about in the now, I would love to see Idris Elba be James Bond.
I think it would
I'm
be.
waiting.
I think. Yeah, I agree.
well,
They already set it up for a
waiting
black
for
woman to take a role. I mean, that's what
I
the
am
last movie
they're
did. They set it
looking
up
at
for.
American Man to be James Bond. So
if I could add,
Go ahead.
I have a certain perspective on James Bond because I kind of ended up spending like a whole chunk of like the past year just a full research dive into James Bond, something admittedly I'm not very proud of, but sticks with me to this day, prominently with James Bond movies. And so on one hand, I want to say that the idea of James Bond being this white British MI6 character, 007, I think makes perfect sense to me. Just when you really look at the kind of way how James Bond is presented, both in the books as well as in the movies, it makes a lot of sense, both in ways that I think the director and the film had intended, and in other ways that I don't think they actually did. Because a lot of times with James Bond, he represents an idea of a dominant factor. And I think that that's something ironically done through his race as well, right? He is this guy who's able to get away with everything. He's able to take off his shirt and he has this big old thing of chest hair, and women love him, and he's this big old British Casanova, right? He fits the idea of the British supermodel, especially at the time. And so I think it's always made sense for him to be played by a white actor, um, especially when you really think of all the kind of fucked up stuff that James Bond does. Like if you've actually sat down and watched all the movies, like from
It makes sense to be a white actor. Think of the fucked up shit he does.
think of no,
Also,
well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about it is that James Bond as a character is also well aware of the type of privilege that he has, both in his appearance, both in his skin color, but as well as his position in MI6, to the point where in several movies he is either retired and has fought his way to get back into his position, or MI6 has fired him and were forced to hunt him down to kill him on sight, and he still got away with it, and he still got his job, and he still got to fuck as many women as he was able to.
well, see, now
and
this is where I
get away
disagree with
it.
Jane and agree more there.
No,
Jeremy,
well, hold
because
on. There's
well,
a
no.
second half here.
Can I have my disagreement here?
Yes.
Okay, just for 1 second. Is James Bond has a right to go black and to go female and to do anything he wants as a character, because even though when those books were written and when the first ones came out, I think it was what 62 or something. I
Yes.
think it was, and
63.
even 63. Okay. So even though every Bond movie has advanced with the times, if you watch a Bond movie today, it takes place in today's time. If you watch a Bond movie 10 years ago, it took place 10 years ago. So it's a natural change. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and I want to do your counterpoint, but I really want to get to Connie's comment because it's a good point
Yes.
in here.
The other thing I just want to say, because it also counters everything that I said previously, is the fact that with every different James Bond, both with every iteration of a different actor, but as well as with every different movie, it's a different way to reiterate what really creates James Bond. A lot of times it becomes more flanderized and becomes more simplistic, and other times it becomes more complicated. And I think now in the modern age, I think everyone, and myself included, are at a point of if anyone wants to come up and take this spot, why not? Who cares anymore? This is something that has lasted for 80 years. Let's make something creative. Let's make it refreshing.
Connie brought up the thing. She said Broadway has a little orphan Annie in every race, which is true. And this is where I agree and disagree. And mostly I'm going to talk about the films here, but also I've seen it on Broadway, and yes, they have. But I'll compare three things. I'll compare the original production plus the 1982 film of Annie, which was definitely predominantly white and all that. It made sense. It took place in the 30s, blah, blah, blah. They remade it in 99, still had the white person. You had a black person playing his assistant, whatever her name was. I just can't remember something. Grace. And playing his assistant, which was cool. That was fine with the times, and it was a very unique thing. But it wouldn't have made sense to make that cast black. And then they did the remake of Annie in 2014. And it was almost an entirely black cast. And you know what? It was phenomenally and well done. Why? Because they moved it to where casting a black cast made sense. They did it to modern times. They did it to where there's no issue if you want to adopt a black person. You could not do that because the likelihood in believing that a bald white guy has got to save this black girl or something back in the 1930s was not realistic. It didn't make sense. They did the Annie live version. They did it. And I'm watching that going, this doesn't make sense. If this guy wants publicity, if this guy wants to do something great, back in that time, he's not going to adopt a black girl. So if you do it, you have to move it, like with James Bond moving the times. That's why I was comparing it to the Annie thing at the same time. They moved that to the times. Nothing wrong with that. But by the same token, give me a remake that they've done in the last, 10 years that they didn't replace the cast with something that either another gender, another race.
But let me ask this then. Why is that important? If you're holding on to the idea that it's just strictly because this is what came before, again, what does it matter if the performance was good? So say for example,
So I'm not saying good or bad movies. So I'm some were very good.
But that's what I'm asking. But I'm asking you, Keith. All of a sudden they remake a movie, and they decide to recast the role. Changing some element that doesn't match up to the previous one, whether it be casting a trans person or casting, changing the role of a white guy to a black guy, whatever. What is it exactly about that? Why does seeing something different become a problem, even though it factors absolutely nothing into the grand
Because
narrative of the story?
sometimes it takes away the realism and the character arcs of these people. It does.
Does it
What
though?
they sometimes, sometimes it absolutely does.
Yeah.
And not only that, in their rush to recast the movies, not that they're bad. You remake a movie. The whole point of remaking a movie is to tell your story to a fresh audience, to a new generation and stuff, which is good. So if you have a little diversity in there, no problem whatsoever. Or a lot of diversity, but I mean, if you have diversity in there, that's not really a huge problem. But when everything you remake, you're remaking it because we need a black version of this film, we need a female version of this film, we need a gay version of this film, we need whatever, then you are taking away, you're not presenting a remake based on the merits of that movie.
See, I agree with you on that one. That's the kind of stuff I think is very despicable. With Hollywood and big budget filmmaking, is the idea of remaking a film in order to get a new, fresh audience and able to get more revenue, especially overseas. So that way, it's appealing for everyone. That's the kind of stuff that I really hate. But you're gonna that because that's what's going to make the most money, right? That's why all superhero films like MCU is going to be something
But
similar, and that's why you have a lot of Disney films that will play it safe in certain theaters because they're trying to get as much money as possible.
but Keith, you just said though that it's not a problem if it's made within the times. What then is a problem then with them doing a remake made within the proper times? Again,
There's nothing wrong with it, but
and
I said to name one that they didn't do that to. The thing is, they're doing it to every remake. There's not a remake that they have done where you can go, oh wow, this is the original kind of cast, this is the original people I grew up with, this is the original vision I have.
But
For
then
the people
why-
there, you want to remake some, go ahead, but you were doing it to every movie.
but then if you're going to just retell the exact same story, why bother?
But why
if you're
eliminate?
going
Why
to-
does that have
But
to
it
be an
doesn't-
aspect?
it
Is my
doesn't
question.
it doesn't negate
If
what
you-
came before. Your movie still
but
exists,
if you're
and you
going
still
with-
have access.
if
But you're
going with that
remaking
movie-
it to modernize it based on the movie's merit itself. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Is it
if
doesn't
you're
matter.
going with that movie and trying to make it better, it's the same thing as when you've got these films out there and you're doing part 11, part 12, part 13. They need to just fucking quit. All right, it ain't gonna work. All right, if you're gonna go off the original situation and try to redo it in a different way, it's not going to work with the people in the public, and they're not going to go see it.
I think we might be getting a bit off topic here. I think we're getting more in the issue of remakes than the.
Well, no, because the problem. This is all about playing the part and redoing casting
Okay.
parts. So yes, this is definitely part of it, and this is also hitting what people call woke casting. Where that's what you got to do.
That's something I agree with you guys on. An example I think I use would be Disney's Lion King remake from 2019.
Thrasher's got a few good comments. I'm gonna get to him in a minute. Thrasher, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick then. Something that I found really interesting about the film was not only was it being presented as a prominently black cast, but also they went on a whole press tour trying to argue the fact that this film was not an animated film but a live action film of the Lion King, because the CGI was just so masterfully done. I think everything about that film is egregious, but more specifically with the topic that we have with remakes, is I feel as though it fails as a remake because it doesn't really have an identity of what really the Lion King was as a story. They looked at it and thought it was something of beauty and of nature and of Africa and of African roots, and there is some importance to that because that's where the Lion King is based in, right? But that's not really something that was important to the story, and so that's something where I can agree with you guys. And it wasn't even that kind of issue as well, right? I know with Timon, they had recasted for a different person to play them. But what's so interesting about it, and something that made a lot of sense to Disney, in order not to upset fans, is even though they didn't recast the same person to play Timon, who was a gay actor, they just got a different gay actor to play Timon.
Right.
And that kind of stuff I think can be bothersome, because I think that wasn't something that really made Timon. And if you wanted that kind of representation anyway, why not just spend the extra money and get the original actor to reprise the role? Because you already did it with Mufasa. And
Chrono
I'll leave
definitely
it
wants to
there.
interject here. Go ahead, Chrono.
I have more issue with poorly made movies than I have with I have with the idea of recasting. Biggest example, Black Christmas. If you ever saw that, the original one, seminal, one of the original, makers of the slasher genre,
I've seen them both, yeah.
especially the holidays, the holiday horror genre. The most recent one was bad, not because it was woke. It was bad because it was a bad movie. it changed its theme to feminism, and that's perfectly fine. But it was ham-fisted and one of the worst storytelling I've ever seen, and acting was also horrible. That's my issue.
And
When it
I
comes
do
to
agree with that, because I think they go for the casting thing, and I think casting plays a big role, because I think sometimes the casting, that's where everything goes. We don't care about the script. We don't care about anything else. We just have to have these kind of characters in our film,
And
no
I
matter
think
what.
that's
They
the
have to be
problem.
this, right? And that's where my issue comes up with remaking it sometimes, because you always say, people are always saying for equality, but like I said, in the last 10 years, I can't think of a remake really where they didn't do that. I really can't. West Side Story came closest, but they had to switch one of them to a trans girl, which didn't make sense for 1960. That being one, that wasn't even really a thing back then. They existed, but as far as being like a public knowledge thing, it didn't make sense. But other than that, I can't really think of a remake. They did that they cared more about remaking the film than their casting choices. And as Atlanta said here, an example, I'm going to get to all his comments. He says maybe the tech of the time didn't allow for good props and stuff like that, which is another reason why you might remake it for the audience. It doesn't have to you don't have to send a. I hate the term woke, by the way. I do. It's just a general term that everybody uses nowadays. But you don't have to send a woke message to remake a film. You can remake a film because the film it is. If you want to cast somebody in a different role, feel free. Go ahead. If it makes sense to have this character, go ahead. That's fine. But when you're saying, I don't want anybody white, I want just a black character, I want just an Asian, or I want just a female to play this character, you don't care about your film. You care about being that woke company, that woke money grab. And that's where you get those shitty movies a lot of times. And if I had an equal mix where sometimes movies were released with a black cast, and then I had remakes released with a white cast or stories, or remakes released with a pretty diverse cast, but a naturally diverse cast, I would have no problem. But there's no such thing as that anymore. If you're going to remake a film, you better change the sex, gender, or racial identity.
I'm going to go into one thing and just say this. And the only time that it kind of worked for a little bit, and it was a point in time, was, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not being racist, I'm just telling, blaxploitation movies. All right? They came out with Blackula. They came out with a Hammer and stuff like that. He was doing everything the superheroes did and shit like that. And all those movies that came out, they were there. And it gave the prop in the front to Marvel Comics to put up Luke Cage and stuff like that. Because the movies back then, like I said, Jim Brown was in them. Hammer was in them. Gosh, I can't think of the other guy's name, and then Shaft. He was the first black detective that made a great movie that was there.
Yeah, and a lot of those movies weren't great back in the day when they were doing the blaxploitation films. They weren't.
But
it's
they
because
got the black
but
people.
I
They got the
understood
black
that.
people to go to movies. They got the black people to go to movies.
And I thought it was a genius idea. But at the same time that they were doing that, there were still other versions of other films. There was still a constant release. Other things that got remade. Some were taken that way. Some weren't. So it was an equal mix. They did what they wanted. I was fine. I don't see that anymore. And I'm still waiting for an example. Do you have one that didn't have to be a priority in remaking your film?
Evil Dead?
Evil Dead is, I think it's a little older than that. More than
The
10
remake?
years. Is it? What year
Hey,
was
there was
Evil
a
Dead?
remake. the remake switched it to a female lead,
Yeah.
And
Oh.
I thought it worked perfectly
Oh,
fine.
man.
I'm not saying it was bad. I didn't think, I didn't think that was bad at all. Evil Dead was fine. I'm just saying there's not a movie that doesn't do it. Because I'm not saying I don't like these movies, because these movies are very good. A lot of them. Some aren't, some are. But there's just, nobody cares about the movie. They care about making sure their movie is, God, I hate it, woke.
See, I don't.
That's how I think it is.
I mean, but I'm not seeing. I mean, I'm not hearing exactly what your argument is. I don't remember. I don't.
Yeah.
I'll get to it in a minute. Let me get these comments and I'll go to the argument in a minute. Thrasher says, I remember the uproar in the black community when DC wanted to make Superman rebooted as black. We talked about this briefly in one of our shows because there were other black Kryptonians that could have had their stories told. I know of others who thought that Sam Wilson becoming Captain America was a hand-me-down from a white man. Why couldn't he continue to be his own self or reinvent himself as something like American Falcon? And the idea is that you having your title handed to you by a white person who is stepping down takes away from the struggles you face and what you've built. Not because he doesn't deserve it, because Falcon is a BMF. I don't know what BMF. I see that all the time.
Badass motherfucker.
Bad.
That's,
Yeah.
okay, that's what it was. Okay, on its own right. Thank you for that one. In his own right, which he is. In my argument, this is a little back from when we were talking about the other things. And I do think it's okay to remake or have characters take over these roles. I don't think that's wrong. I just think you're basically saying to your white community, and I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to offend anybody, because I know most people think that white are just privileged and get everything in the world and everything's perfect hunky-dory for them. But you're basically saying in this world, what you guys did not like before is white people aren't important. You don't matter. We can't have a story all white people. You can't do that. And you're reversing it. You're going to the extreme to where, like I said, you're basing equality via inequality. You're saying that everybody's got to be changed because the straight white male doesn't matter anymore. I'm not a straight white male, but the straight white male doesn't matter anymore, and I see that. I see what they're talking about.
I think the issue there is that it's when you're talking, and especially for me, when you're talking about historically, and this goes back to what I had said, when historically 95% of the time you don't see yourself represented on the screen, it's and now all of a sudden you're seeing a shift where they're now trying to balance it out. I mean, when you're balancing, you're moving things between back and forth, something is going to have to give. And unfortunately, when you were the dominant, now all of a sudden, as other stories are coming in, something is going to have to be pushed out, even though that's not really what's happening, because instead of now 95%, it's about 80% of white folk still having representation. And now you're seeing...
And that should go down, and I believe that should still go down too.
Yes.
But my point is, if I have a kid that I want to take to see a movie that I loved as a kid, and I'm like, the kid's not going to be interested, it's a 30-year-old movie, it's a 40-year-old movie, kids don't want to see that, it's old. So there's a new one coming out. Now, if I keep taking them to see these remakes of movies that I absolutely love, they're going to look as white children and go, why is everybody who's cool got to not be white? And is it not in the future going to create that problem? In the future, is it not doing the same thing?
And the counter argument is, well, why can't I see myself on the screen?
That's
and
what
again, and the thing is, there's always examples of the white, because 95% of the, for most of Hollywood, that is what the stories have always been. My thing is like, give us a chance to tell our stories, to tell a version of those stories.
And I think you have been, shortchanged a lot. I think that all these racist cultures and sexual identities that we've talked about have been shortchanged. And I do believe they deserve the right to shine. I just don't see why everything has to do it, because I think it sometimes destroys franchises too. Go back to one of the big ones we talked about with Star Wars. The new sequel, one of the biggest things about the sequel was creating a female protagonist in those films, as being it. But, they went so far to prove women could do anything that they forgot about character arcs, they forgot about development. They went to show that she is all-powerful. They went too far with this. And I think that's what they do with the Terminator franchise. Same thing with Dark Fate. Let's get rid of no men needed, because if a man wants to save you, it's wrong. So let's make all the roles that live and the heroes all females.
I think that, but I don't think that's what happened. I think you just have bad storytelling, not not
You do have bad storytelling. That's what I'm saying, because they were so focused on having this character be this type of character that they didn't care about the story, and they threw so much in that they didn't know what to do. And you're right, it created bad storytelling. If you weren't focused on that, you would be more focused on the story. You know how I feel about the Scream and the diverse casting. I think that gets ridiculous, because that's not a typical group of friends or stuff like that. You know that this person was put in there because of that. I feel the same way if I watch Boys in the Hood and they had to put a white person in there to be white. It is not good either. It is wrong. It doesn't fit. Or South Central. It is just as wrong. It's not about just doing one way or another. But when we've got to have a black person. I mean, South Park has an entire show with one character literally called Token to make fun of this. Now is Tolkien, I know, because, they changed it now, which was a good episode. But literally, to make fun of how you shoehorn characters in there because of that. And it takes away sometimes what the movie means, in my opinion.
We've always had the old horror stories where the black guy that's in there and he's the first guy that died.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad they kind of fixed that. Some movies make fun of it, some fix it, some change it. Sometimes the black person's the hero, no problem there. And some movies get afraid. There's a horror story. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie The Hitcher. This is one of the first movies that I can recall that did this. They remade The Hitcher in 2005. It was originally in the 1980s from HBO. And one of the biggest scenes in that movie that was just jaw-dropping was the woman's tied to two trucks and is ripped in half as they pull apart. It was a huge scene. They killed the female character. Oh my God, the female lead's dead. Well, in the remake, they don't want to do that to the female, so they kill the guy off. But they took away the one aspect, you never expected out of that movie and turned it into your typical horror. You took away what made your movie very unique and different by recasting and redoing the roles of who was who.
I think the problem is that there's two different discussions happening.
We're going through a few different things, but yeah.
I agree. I
mean, you're talking about the creative filmmaking process, and I'm thinking in terms of relevant, social identity and stuff like that.
It's meant to be a combination of both. I actually brought that up because he had mentioned because Bill had mentioned what the movie you just mentioned. It reminded me of The Hitcher back then when they switched it up. But no, you're talking about creative. The identity of your cast is going to impact currently your creative process and what you do with your movie, because you also now live in a world. Yeah, what was it about Jim Parsons? Go ahead.
So one of the girls put up Jim Parsons tonight, and all three of the girls, I told them, I said, they're smart girls. They're big girls, and everyone thinks they're dumb, but they're really smart. All three of the girls, all of my goddaughters. But I told them, I said, you watch Big Bang Theory. I said, you'll get something out of it. So Jim Parsons was put into a role where he was a straight guy, even though he was a nerd. All right.
Let him finish, because this was brought up in the comments.
You're talking about the Big Bang Theory guy, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Big Bang Theory, yeah. So Jim Parsons was playing in there, and he was a straight guy, and he played a great role. And then you had inside that show, talking about people who should be playing what they are or what they aren't. Right? I don't even remember her name. Amy Farrah Fowler character is actually a neuroscientist, right? And it's known she hosts Jeopardy now. But the other guys all actually talked about everything and stuff on TV and stuff and in interviews, and they're all, well, we're all just like, dumb as a box of rocks. But they put these guys in there and they taught them what to say and teach them what to do and everything like that. And you go like that, so you can't. What the hell is that?
I have no idea.
And you like I said, when you have someone that's got to be a part, you can train them for that part. Let them learn their lines and everything like that. But it doesn't mean that they're that person. You know,
I
Amy
always
Farrah
thought
was a neuroscientist.
I always
and
thought that was the point of acting, that you could play any part, that you could do
Yes,
anything, and the better
yes,
actor you were. I mean, we always say things when we're going with races and cultures and genders based on or especially with racism, based on skin color. But yet, how many British actors put on an American accent? They're not American. They don't know what it's like to be American. Should they not be allowed these roles?
House.
That I don't know. Saying stuff like that sounds. It feels reductive, and I'm really sorry to say that.
I
Like,
know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Um,
I,
James.
if I could, yeah. So I feel like there's a couple things here. Um, maybe this is just me. I think the argument being made for at least the Jim Parsons, because I'm assuming you're talking about his role in Big Bang Theory,
Yes.
with Amy and everything. Um, that character was never kind of necessarily needed to become like a straight character when the show had started, and as the show went on, the new showrunners and writers come in and they try to find things that are more interesting for the show and make sure that actors are comfortable with it, you know, especially with people like Jim Parsons, who became a producer later on the show. Anything that his character did, things that he was comfortable with, right? Same with Neil Patrick Harris, right, in How I Met Your Mother. So that also comes down to different kind of communication, and with shows like that, you know, different people are coming through all the time.
Just so you
Yeah,
know,
but if
Neil Patrick Harris, when he was put into the show, right, in How I Met Your Mother, they wrote him in as being the biggest womanizer that they could find anywhere.
Yeah,
right.
yes,
Above and beyond. Hang on, above and beyond Sam Malone from Cheers,
Yeah.
going against Charlie Harper and everything like that. They put him as a straight guy. I'm just saying. So
yeah,
Yeah.
So okay,
it was
so
wrote that way.
but this is where that comes in with How I Met Your Mother. The character is about being straight and being a womanizer and all these other things, and knowing that, how is that different than the main character being a gay character? Neither one knows the life of the other one. So why can't a straight character not play the gay character, but the
They
gay
can play
character
that
can play
person,
the
and the same thing.
womanizer?
They can
And they
play
do.
that person. Just same thing I was saying with Jim Parsons,
Yeah.
and he knew what he was going into, and he took it full out, and he read the script. He did everything he had to do, and he acted like that. And I tell you what, I love the guy to death.
Before
I
get
see
to
him
the-
on when he was on Craig Ferguson's show and shit like that, and seen everything. He's hilarious, and he's a good actor.
Man, if I see another British guy play a Southerner, they don't even know what a biscuit is. I love it. I love it. Okay. But that was my argument: is why is it different? Now, by the way, it's not that I have a problem with this. I really don't. It's that, why does this have to be an argument? Why can you not just take the movie on its merit? And I'm not talking about you in general, anybody on this panel, because you probably don't do that. Why is it a thing all over Twitter? Why is it news? Why has it got to be everywhere that this is an issue when something like that happens?
Because there's always someone against it, no matter what it is. No matter
everyone
what it
has
is.
an opinion.
In any and every movie, there's always someone against something.
And by the way, also back to Chrono from my previous argument, when I was saying, you said who can cast who in what movie, and my point with casting people wrong, when directors pick a certain character and you lose your story because you're so concentrated on that character, is we also live in a world where you can't do anything. You're not allowed to make certain characters look weak. You're not allowed to kill them off first. You're not allowed. So you're actually specifically specifying a role of which this character fits, that you cannot do these things to. You have to be able to do these things to. And this is why I'm saying your story gets hurt for it. You know, you put the Rey in the Star Wars, which was started the conversation. Well, we can't make Rey weak or vulnerable like we did with Luke, because she's a strong white female. So we can't do certain things, or the internet will attack us. You know, and that's what I think directors are fighting, and that's why I think it's hurting films. I know. You got that.
When they-
I think
Well,
that might
no,
be
when
something
they write
that's
the
hurting a
script-
bigger film industry. I don't think that's something that's actually hurting film as a whole
You
necessarily.
don't? Terminator Dark Fate had a really, really good premise.
Yeah, and I don't think Terminator has really been seen as like the big box office like grab in the
It
good
was
recent
supposed to
few
be.
years. Yeah.
James
course it
Cameron was back. It was
Of course
supposed to
it's
be.
supposed to be, but whatever, it wasn't going to be because at least no one my age wants to go see those Terminator movies anymore. 'Cause we know they're going to be crap. And the
Well,
thing
it's
is,
short.
that
Fuck you!
I feel old now.
You're short.
You know
man,
what?
You're
They
short,
will.
And that's the
all right?
point.
they will,
And-
they will come at me.
But you know what?
Sometimes,
Shit.
Okay,
hold on. Sometimes, sometimes
just nailed
sometimes
it,
they're
though.
hits, sometimes
People
there's
your
hits.
age don't want to see that Terminator film. People in this woke, and that is a lot of the younger generation that is starting this, don't want to see these films. So you're rewriting the film for people of your generation that don't want to see the fucking films while pissing off the people of the previous generation.
But that's something that
Yeah.
happens with every generation. You know,
No, it doesn't.
it does.
No.
Like anytime in
If
Hollywood,
they watch
there's
the
always a
first one,
different-
they go through and watch
I haven't
the rest.
seen this. There's 2 generations that have passed me. I have not seen it.
That is always
Until
in
this one.
Hollywood, though, is different dominant factors always taking over, showing what kind of films are being distributed, which ones are being best marketed, which ones are making it to the theater, who's getting the higher acting credits. That's part of the industry.
Yeah, you
and that's something that evolves with it, right?
So
The
you do
biggest
believe
thing-
in bringing in star power.
the biggest thing I think right now that is grabbing people isn't stuff that's being made in Hollywood anymore. I think it's being stuff that's being distributed by bigger industry level people who have come from Hollywood and have been able to adapt in different places, more specifically like Georgia, right? And have started to create their own different types of like Hollywood. I'll leave it there because I see that there's a comment here.
Oh, that's okay. I was listening. I was just bringing it up because I was going to get to it. Thrasher said that people used to make new stories and movies that were based on themes from other stories, which is perfectly fine. That's where you can change things around. For example, the song Twilight Zone by Golden Earring was based on the books from the Bourne series. There's nothing wrong with an occasional retelling based on different core changes. Core changes being, I think, a key word there. But everything now is based on that. That's exactly it. That's the whole basis for remaking or telling a story. You can have, for example, a horror movie based on The Wizard of Oz that has no characters or settings from The Wizard of Oz, which is oddly enough true. I mean, it's got Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey coming out, and some other interesting ones out there that you can. And that is the problem, that they're not basing it on the stories anymore. They're basing it on how can we appeal to what used to be the minorities. And they still kind of are, but as a group they're not. So,
But I want that. I want that,
But-
and I want
but
that
why?
done well.
but okay,
Bec-
I agree with that done well. I do agree it's done well. But why? As one of those people in the group,
Because we're seeing stories retold over and over again. Again, if I wanted to see a modern take on Nightmare on Elm Street and then pissed off that they changed X, Y, and Z, I still have the original Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, that does not negate that. It does not all of a sudden, now unless you're George Lucas, in which case then he gets rid of everything. But, you know, it still exists. You know, so the thing that you want still exists. And that's, I think, where I think that is where I'm having a hard time reconciling your issue, because, you know, it just sounds like you just want stories that are from your perspective in a broader sense. I'm not saying that, you know, but, you know, I want a change in storytelling. I want to see.
will you no longer watch white movies?
I will no longer watch.
You're a
crappy
bad person.
movies.
Yeah, well, yes, you will. I know you. You will too.
Okay, that's
Fantasy
a lie.
Island, my
I'll still
friend.
watch
Fantasy
it.
Island.
Yeah.
I was like,
And just go back
Look,
into one of my favorites and one of Keith's favorites, Halloween.
mhm.
All right,
That just, yeah.
Rob Zombie
have to-
redid it.
Do we have to? Do we have to bring that
Yeah,
one
different
up?
people. Boom.
Connie says, sorry, James, wrong. When you have movies that are great and go into extras, everyone wants to see it. And I do think that the movie should hold more merit than what you're doing with it, and I'm afraid we're going to go down to the point that, the new Ghostbusters is one that I thought actually was a good movie. I didn't think it was bad. I thought they did a good job.
Afterlife
on it.
or
Afterlife.
Okay.
Afterlife. No, the other one sucked.
Connie
But the other one was a
Connie
prime
K loves
example.
the Terminator movies.
Pardon me?
Connie K loves the Terminator movies.
I did.
Here's the thing. Here's
I
the
had her
thing.
start watching them, and she loved watching them and going all the way down through it and stuff like that, and watching them all. And I told her, I said, it's still going to be good.
But-
Just go with it what it is.
Well, here's the thing, right? And this is coming from someone. I'm also been a Terminator fan. That's something that I grew up on ever since I was a kid. But yeah, I'm not saying it from my own perspective of it as like an audience member. I'm also talking about how it is handled now in the industry, right? Like how it's being handled statistically, right? You go and look at the box office for Terminator, and this last couple of Terminators do not do very well. Terminators are not expected to do very well. It's the same thing with like M. Night Shyamalan movies. They're not expected to do very
That
well.
is
They're
not true.
expected
The
to make money.
Terminator
They're
was
expected
definitely
to make
expected
returns.
to do well.
But
this
these
new
aren't like the biggest
Terminator was expected to do
blockbuster
well,
hits
and it
anymore.
actually did well. So
Yeah,
What did?
the Terminator.
So
you have to
Again-
look at what goes into the movie set, and when they watch it in the movies, plus the after effect across seasons, stuff like that, how much money they make, and they boom.
So do you mean to tell me that you were
Everyone
really
wants to see
pissed off
Arnold.
at the? Are you mean to tell me that you were really pissed off at the sudden shift in characterization of Linda Hamilton's character?
No, that to me kind of mostly fit because she did get
Because
stronger
it was
each
well
movie.
done.
That's not the problem. Linda Hamilton was already a strong female character with an arc throughout the movies who achieved. Why did everybody else who survived and was strong and that have to be the woman? And if you were a guy, you were dead.
Again, it feels reductive the way you're describing it. You know,
But why? I mean, why do you have to do that? Why are you? And I know or at least I believe I know the answer is because if we kill off the woman, we're going to get flack from the internet. If we
Wasn't
make
the-
the woman weak, we're going to get flack.
Wasn't the main protagonist of Terminator Sarah Connor?
Yeah.
The
But that's
Yeah,
the thing.
like I
mean,
just-
when you take her
Like I
character
just
at the end.
said, like I just
Yeah.
said, she was the strong character in the films, had her arc, did well. It made sense.
she
in
wasn't a
Terminator.
strong character in the first movie.
No, I said had her arc to become one. The first one she wasn't, and the second one it made sense that she was.
She was.
She went Looney Tunes and she worked out and all this other stuff. I mean, either way, she had an arc that developed her into a strong character.
She was also
Everybody
the sole
introduced
survivor
Matt.
of that first film. Same thing with like Alien, also Sigourney Weaver. Yeah, you can make that with a lot of arguments with even just horror movies in particular that you're going to expect the guys to die, right? Like, isn't one of the
Sigourney Weaver
biggest
came
horror
back from
tropes, slasher
Resurrection.
tropes?
Yes, but in the original Alien, guys died and
That's-
females died, and the group of the cast did. In the new ones, that doesn't happen. Okay, it's only the guys who are really going to die, unless it's some for heroic action, that saves everybody or whatever it happens to be that she did in the end of the Terminator films. When you're remaking it, you're casting everybody strong in the case of Terminator and stuff as the female character. When you remade Scream or did the new Scream, you casted everybody that was strong or survived as the diverse culture. If you were white, you died. Now some say that was intentional, but if it's intentional, you lost the point of the Scream franchise, which is who's going to be
And they
who.
pushed it up. They pushed it up because Resurrection, she was a clone, and they put her back in the movie.
Talking
Yeah.
about aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, in Aliens. But you know what they did? They put her back in the movie. They didn't surround her with only a strong female cast and kill off all the guys when they remade that. You can have a strong female protagonist. No problem whatsoever with that. I mean, Ellen Ripley is a badass bitch. Sarah Connor is a badass bitch. They did a great job with those characters. When you do it now, when you brought the new, like literally you brought the 2016 Ghostbusters, was 2016? The 2016 Ghostbusters with the female cast. You replaced it with females, fine. But then you had, your token guy had to be white and stupid, which was fine because he is, in general. But you have to make sure that they are not harmed. They are strong to begin with. Nothing can harm them. You take away. You couldn't have the arc with the new Terminator film. You could not do Sarah Connor's arc with the new girl, with the new protagonist in the film. Because she came out as a strong badass, I'm not sticking up for shit, everything. She didn't do that. She didn't develop into the character we know. Linda Hamilton's character did. Through the movies. Mark Hamill for Star Wars did. He was a whiny little bitch boy. And even though I'm not a big fan of Luke Skywalker in general, he had his arc. He developed. You couldn't do that with Rey. There was no arc. She could do everything. You take that away because you're afraid to say this character can be weak. 2 comments. Case in point, because we got a little behind here, and that's probably because I was talking my head off. Sorry. Case in point, when we were talking about a lot of the movies and shows with lead characters, they're next to zero cop shows and movies where the lead is a white male. Because of white male cop violence portrayed in the news, especially the classic badass, not by the book cop. And is that a thing? Oh, well. And again, that's a good point. It's not that they're having cop shows that are the black cop leads or female cop leads or anything like that. It's the fact that they're not having them the other way as well. You are not seeing the occasional one. And it is because they're afraid. And it is completely because they're afraid to do it. More on Thrasher. I think Keith's point is that when white people consume other cultures, it's appropriation. But when it's the other way around, as a white dude in a Hispanic majority city, I get looks when I shop at the Mexican grocery stores. Well, they better get over it because their food is freaking delicious and I'm going to eat it. Agreed. Agreed. As a trade-off here, some have Cracker Barrel and root beer. And hell yeah, Laura Croft for the win. Princess... damn it, I hate when this thing sticks at me. There we go. There we go. Princess Leia with a blaster, way more badass than Luke was. You know, you had that character too. And she didn't need the arc. Well, she wasn't the main protagonist, even though she should have been, because I agree. She just needed someone to unlock her door, and she was off the chain. It's a good way to put it, yeah. I like that. Connie says, gotta go, Uncle Bill, love you. And Ashley, just call me Bruce Williams, says, Angie Dickinson, policewoman, early 70s. But wait, where Bill's gone. I'm going to let Bill hit that as soon as he gets back. Do you understand at all what I'm trying to say? It's not that I'm against it and I want it the other way. I'm just saying you're so concentrated on this kind of casting. And to give actors who are very talented flack because they don't fit the diversity you think should be in that role is just as bad as saying another character could play anybody and it's fine. Another culture, another race, another gender. You get flack because it's not fair. Do you think Brokeback Mountain, Philadelphia, any of those would have had the response if they did not have the characters playing them? You think people would have gone and seen it? Based on that story alone with unknowns, do you think they would have been like Oscar-winning performances or movies?
I think in the end, though, what the difference between is because those were actually done, those movies were done well. I mean, if that shit happened and the movie was crap, you know, I think that'd be a different discussion, you know.
Right, and I agree. They were very well done, and I think the stars, and they used star power to get those movies out there. I mean, nobody would have freaking seen Brokeback Mountain if they didn't try to throw Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal in that. You know, it was just, especially at the time it came out. But they were really well done movies. But if they did the same quality of a movie today and cast a straight man in that role, that movie would get flack.
But I think the difference is, especially when you're talking about now, is that there are good actors that they now, that door has been open to give the gay actors the opportunity to give, you know, it, and that's the biggest problem. You know, you're talking about Hollywood back then. Again, they didn't, you know, those roles weren't necessarily open to those actors, you know, to the gay actors or to, you know, the other actors, you know.
Admittedly, and they should have the opportunity, but that should not be the prerequisite for the job. You know,
but you know, I hear what you're saying, I really do. But the question then is, so what happens? I mean, is there a way to properly balance this all?
Yeah, you
know,
do a casting call and don't ask them their sexuality or anything else, and you pick the best person. And eventually, you don't. This wouldn't be an issue if the producers and the writers would not give in to the flack they receive on the internet. Some of the movies we've even mentioned on this show would not be what they were if they didn't give in to the internet one way or another. But because they do now, people know their voices are going to be heard loud and clear. They're going to bitch about everything, so everything gets made their way. Fuck everybody else. And that's a problem, because if everybody does that, nobody's ever going to be happy, and everybody's going to be trying to fix things until we're going to watch a movie called Condensation, or something like that that's just boring and two people sitting there. I wanted to say to Bill really quick. I got to go, Uncle Bill. Love you, from Connie. I know you stepped away. And Ashley said Angie Dickinson, policewoman, early 70s. What did you have to say on that, Bill? I wanted to give you a chance to go back to Jeremy. I just want to...
Angie Dixon was a great actress early. I mean, she was in movies with John Wayne and stuff like that. And she got her own police show before there was any other women having a police show. So it was Policewoman, way back then. And it was Angie Dixon and Earl Holliman, the only other person that I know that was a major actor and stuff like that. And she was the star of the show. The only other thing you had going on at that point in time, which came on like 2 years after she started her show, was, and it wasn't black exploitation, but it was movies. It was Cleopatra Jones started doing her movies, and then right after that, Pam Grier started doing her stuff. So Angie Dixon, when she got her own show, it left it open so the women could have their movies and their shows and stuff. Just saying.
I want to get to the next comment on there. Do you have anything to add on that, Jeremy or Jane, before I get to the next comment?
No.
That or my comment before that, when I was talking before that. I just want to make sure. All right. There's two good things. You say you have to see yourself. You like to see yourself in a film. I get that. I do understand that. I want to, too. I don't see a lot of fat guys being heroes. I don't think that every show, and for some people, I'm not saying me or anybody else, but for some people, their weight is not a choice. They are stuck that way, and there's nothing they can do, or being too tall, or being weird, and they don't fit the roles. I don't think every movie's got to be made with a fat guy, just so I can feel like I like something. I know I'm never going to be these characters, but damn, it's nice to watch other people have a story. And, wrong one. Thrasher says, you want proof that we don't need to see ourselves to love a media? Explain America's love for anime.
Weeaboos.
That's actually an excellent question. Not for you, Jeremy. You see, but for a lot, he's absolutely
I mean, I see
right.
it as a fetishization of an Asian culture, but hey, that's just me.
I said not for you, because I get that. But in general, that's a great point. Or just cartoons in general and stuff like that. Like animal cartoons and stuff where it's not actually a person. Another good point, with the sexism, you just hire because you're good at the part. Good point. It's illegal to hire or fire someone based on race, sex, country of origin, sexual preference, religion, etc. And disabilities. But in acting, you better be paying attention to that. Why? It's a job.
And for me, it goes back to the idea of general representation. Yes, ideally, yes, in an ideal situation, you want to get the best actor for the job. But, it becomes, and again, and it does boil down to what the point of the narrative is. What story are they trying to tell? What perspective they're trying to give? But, while it's great that they get the best actor, it's even more powerful if they actually are representatives of that particular identity. Believe me, if Crazy Rich Asians were made with a bunch of white people, I'd feel a little bit.
It's called Crazy Rich Asians.
It may have been a good movie, but it may feel a little insincere or not as impactful if they didn't have the Asian folk in there. So
Thrasher says there are situations where you can hire fire based on those things, where the theme of a job requires it, like female Hooters employees, and the ability to do certain physical tasks like a firefighter. And I don't know if you know of this, Thrasher, you probably do. You're old enough to. There was a big thing when a guy tried to be a Hooters employee at one point. That was a huge court case because he sued him because they wouldn't hire him because he was a guy. And that's not supposed to exist.
And I won. That was me, yeah.
I know.
Congratulations.
Not supposed to exist. If seeing yourself is also so important along the lines of the anime, look at the shows coming in now from overseas. Look at the imported movies we're getting that people are just loving. The thing is I see people like you, Chrono, and not you particularly, but like you or Jane, saying we're not represented when we see these movies, and sometimes it's hard to see I'm not represented in that movie. But when I watched, what was that big Korean show that came through?
Squid Game?
Yeah, Squid Game. And I watch that and stuff like that. I'm not thinking this should be white people. I need white people in this. When we're watching all these foreign movies that are coming in, the Japanese horror movies that come in, yes, they remake them with white people. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not watching those and thinking, I don't feel I'm a part of this. When I watch a Bruce Lee movie, I'm not thinking, this should be a white guy doing karate. I never felt excluded on movies that I loved that were told from a black perspective or an Asian perspective or anything like that. I never felt out, and I guess that's where I'm at a little bit of a disconnect with you.
There is, and it goes back to what I had said, though, about a universality of media, where you can get the broad strokes and enjoy and see, at least on a broader perspective, yourself as a hero in whatever you're watching, or but if you are a part of that culture, if you are a part of that identity, the stuff that's in there will speak much louder to you. For example, Everything Everywhere All at Once, absolutely phenomenal movie. And on a grander perspective, you could talk about the concept and idea of disappointment and living up to one's expectations on a broad perspective. But being someone of the Asian persuasion, seeing that there's actually so much coded there that as an Asian I completely feel and understand, that movie hit hard for me.
Okay.
That movie is one of my favorite movies from for this year. And it was made because, and it became so powerful for me because of the Asian perspective that they presented in it. And it also had Michelle Yeoh, so that was really good too.
Well, so there's those little aspects that help as well on there. I guess I'm also a little torn with, and again, this doesn't apply to anybody on this panel particularly, but they're always saying that, the white male stuff is entitled and privileged to get all this, and yet they're not the ones clamoring when they see a movie, and don't take this wrong, so I'm not trying to be rude, saying, we need a version for us. We deserve that.
He's talking about me. It's all right.
I am. And like I say, I think people are taking on the negative roles of which they used to have against other people. And, we need to have our versions. We need to have this. And do you think in 20 years, I'm beginning to think that, and I'm fine with it, basically, whites are going to become a minority and stuff. They're not going to be portrayed in films because everybody's so afraid right now. If this trend continues, we'll be having the same fight that everyone else is having. And it's not going to stop unless you do find a way to mix the two. What do you think about that? Before I get to these great comments.
Just so you know, Southeast Michigan, the whites are already the minorities right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of places where whites are minorities now. That's true.
So
but I mean, in general, as far as movies and business, they are the majority.
County, Oakland County, and Wayne County, whites are the minorities now.
Mm-hmm. It is. But I mean, as far as movies and business go right now, whites are the majority. Especially when it comes to filmmaking, whites are generally the majority in like Hollywood and all that. So do you think that's going to be the case? And if so, are we really solving anything?
I mean, in the end, I mean, it's way too far in the future to even try and come up with. That's,
Well, if back then they'd have thought about the future, we wouldn't have this issue now.
exactly.
So
Well, yes,
thinking about the
exactly.
future could be a good thing.
I mean,
So why not
point there.
normalize instead of going extreme? Is my thing. Why not normalize that your movie could be with black, or it could be
But
with
again,
white, or
is
it
it
could be with
is it
somebody playing the
extreme?
opposite role?
I can make.
It's
I'll
getting
make
to
the
that
argument.
point. Even as
I'll make
Thrasher
the argument
said,
that it's. I'll make the argument that it's not extreme. That it's finally in equilibrium. Equilibrium is finally being achieved, or at least we're going towards that. You know, and it just so happens that it may feel like, again, the broader white folk are now all of a sudden getting pushed away to hear the voices of the other. And I say white when I don't necessarily just.
I know what you mean.
Other
You're
culture.
fine. I get it.
Um,
I say black. I don't mean just one group. Okay. I say Asian. I don't mean just one.
but I think that we're at a point where equilibrium is, again, you won't be able to reach equilibrium if you by tiptoeing. Someone is
That's
going
what they're
to be
doing.
It's either they're tiptoeing or they're being blatant about it, Crit Keith. So I mean, I think
true.
I think I think you're saying the representation of that all of a sudden someone will be eventually underrepresented, and then we'll be back in the situation again.
I do think we're headed that direction.
Yeah, I personally don't think so. I think that the pendulum is just swinging itself towards the middle, and I hope that we find ourselves at that equilibrium.
Ashley has a question. She says, "Are you willing to act as another race or gender, and how would you feel about it?"
Oh God, no, no. I would not. I would not be comfortable being that spokesperson. That representation.
I completely would. I have no problem with that at all. I believe it's literally called acting. I don't believe you should limit what you can do. They used to say the sky's the limit, and now they're saying, halfway up the tree is the limit.
So, and this goes back when, before Hollywood knew any better. But you mean to tell me that it was okay for, was it Jerry Lewis playing the very, very ugly stereotype of an Asian man, or even John Wayne and Genghis Khan? You mean to tell me that if done in modern times, that's no? We know better as a society that you shouldn't be trying.
You can't go on because that's what killed him. He was
and we agree that was wrong.
He did the atomic bomb, and it killed him.
I don't think her question has to do with looking the appropriate stereotypes of Asians or blacks or doing blackface. I don't think that's where her question is going. I think she's just talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, I think she's just talking about like figures in general, or playing it or another gender. Well, gender, that goes either way. You had movies like White Chick, you have Hairspray, you have all these other things with genders.
Yeah, she's asking something, and she's asking you if you want to play that role or be okay with it, I guess. I don't know.
And like I said, no, but Keith, you said that you'd be okay because it's acting. But again, when you think back, and again, we know better now, but when you look
she's
back,
asking about you, not about everyone else.
I've responded. No, and I've responded. I said I would not be comfortable. Keith, on the other hand, has said that he would because it's acting. Again, I realize that the 1920s, 30s, 40s were a very racist time. But by that definition, because it's just acting, is that okay? And no, we know better. That is not okay.
He was a bad actor on that, and he got talked into it. And he put them out there in the area where
Bill,
your atom bomb forced down, and he died.
But think of some of the greatest performances we've had. Look at Eddie Murphy. Look at the Nutty Professor and stuff. Look at Coming to America. He played white characters. He played women. He's played black characters. He's done that all.
Those were parodies or comedies that there wasn't.
It's still film, is what I'm saying.
Yes, but again, you're making a distinction between, again, the broader importance of representation and. Versus, the individual moments like that. And I think that's where this discussion is
Well, in
dipping
that
back and forth.
sense, Atlanta Thrasher says Jerry Lewis as an Asian was a comedy too.
Yeah, very true.
So
but
why was it
still,
not
still
okay?
horribly inappropriate.
I'm not
Horribly
saying it wasn't
inappropriate.
inappropriate. I don't. Again, I don't think. Again, I don't think her question was geared towards going the extremes of perpetuating all the stereotypes. And she also says, "Don't mess with my Uncle Bill." Thrasher says, "Anime also exists because of Scrooge McDuck." So
I have no idea what that, but okay. I'm not sure what that means, but um,
well, he was a rich white duck. I don't know how he's saying it, but okay. Um, and but he does agree with Michelle. Yo is a goddess. Yo is a goddess. It is my privilege to eat all the Mexican food from the previous comment. He says he's actually a white minority in the South, lol, and that we can all agree that Martians suck, which not all of them.
Marvin the Martian. Yeah, okay.
I like Marvin.
Yeah,
I
Marvin's
like
good.
Marvin.
Yeah.
And she is back. All right, Jane, I was going to give you a chance, and you disappeared on there to hit on anything. I'll go through these last two comments, and then I'll give you that chance. Yeah, I think the last person to do blackface in a film was Robert Downey Jr., but he wasn't actually playing a black guy. He was a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
And again, the point of that was was making fun of, that's a different story. Now, Ted Danson doing blackface while he was dating Whoopi Goldberg, that was another matter completely.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to say blackface is necessarily right, but it can. What if the movie
Different
does
thing,
kind of call
different
for
topic,
it?
dude.
What if the movie calls for it? You have white guys playing black characters. We're talking about actual portrayals, so I don't want to get that. But like movies like Soul Man,
Again, back in the day, we know better now.
But did it not send a message still? I thought it sent a great message. I did see that as a white kid, and I walked away from that theater understanding more how hard black people had it. Maybe not to the extreme they do, but I understood a lot more because of that movie.
The overarching...
Keith,
go ahead.
Keith.
Yeah.
Keith, you saw that as a white kid. Did you have any other options at that point in time? Did you see it as a black kid or anything? I'm just saying. Did you saw it that way?
At that time, yeah, because I got shown that a white kid could become black. I saw the movie. Tanning pills. He apparently did it. And that. But that's, sometimes... You can still. I think you can still get the message across. I don't think it always has to be that way. I think you can still get the message across, still not being what you're playing or what you're portraying. And that was. I don't want to go into that because that was not an actor playing the opposite role. But as an example, when she acted about playing a different race or gender, yeah, because if you do a good enough job to get the message on the merit of the movie, it may not be the best, the right, even the appropriate casting choice. But if they pull it off, hence Brokeback, Philadelphia, stuff like that, then they've still sent the message they wanted to send. Call Me by Your Name. More recent one. Jane, you have not said anything, and I'm not used to that. What's going on?
Just waiting for a time to jump in.
You can just jump in sometimes. You're good.
Oh, I've tried.
Go ahead.
I've nothing to add.
Right.
from where I am, from where it is right now in the conversation.
To answer his question about the Scrooge McDuck, says, "Trust me, it's true. Look it up. Manga was driven by the popularity of the Scrooge McDuck comics in Japan at the time." I didn't actually know that. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Ashley says, "Bye, Uncle Bill." And Thrasher was also surprised by that himself. And Thrasher says, "Everybody shut up for Jane." We are.
Thank you, Thrasher.
Especially me.
Looking out for me.
Jane, what about you though? What about the idea? Would you feel comfortable portraying, other, whatever that other might be?
I mean, I think an issue that I go through currently is that those are the kind of roles that have kind of always been given to me. For me, being a trans woman, but I've not actually gone through any sort of transitioning process or taken estrogen or, a lot of directors, when I have been casted for things, always want to go down more of a passing route of portraying me as a cis white dude in certain films and shows and theater and I've learned to be okay with that over time because those are the kind of roles that just keep on coming presented to me. But something that I'm very excited of in the future is being a part of projects where I can really push my own representation, whether that be through films that I create or through me as an acting role. But I guess to answer the question, I guess for a time, yes, but I would like to stem away from that now.
All right. I have a question for both of you, actually, that are here on the panel, obviously, because Bill isn't
Oh,
there.
good.
If you, as you're both into movies, if you had the chance to make a movie right now and be yourself, portray a role that is yourself, not you, but you being a trans person, you were playing a role as a trans person, or you being Asian, going to be playing a role as an Asian, would you rather remake a role or create a new film or story? What do you think is the better choice?
I would want to create a new story because I think the idea of always remaking stuff is kind of a talentless thing to do to begin with. You know, there only comes so many points where a certain thing can become reimagined and reproduced and remade or remixed or whatever. You know, there's at some point I think that a certain idea or a certain franchise or a certain whatever has to reach its ending, right, in order for there to be the ability for other types of ideas and projects to grow. So I guess I would go that route of something
What's my daughter
new.
now? And it happens, okay.
Let me mute that really quick. Okay.
Phil's
Sorry
in
about
his
that.
in his own world.
All right. Well, that's fair. What about you, Chrono? What do you think you'd prefer? Do you think you'd be able to retell a story better that's
If
already been told?
if that retelling gives an interesting perspective, then yes, I would love to do it, because I would love to be in like a modern Nightmare on Elm Street where with a that would be fantastic. But at the same time, I'm with Jane, and I think that um, there are so many other stories that can be told, that need to be told, that you can't do within the context of a remake, that give a proper and honest uh, an, an honest truth or honest storytelling. That I think, as much as I would love to do a remake or be a part of a franchise, I think at the same time, I'd much prefer to do an original.
Shouldn't that, I think, in a lot of ways, shouldn't that be more the focus than instead of trying to reinventing movies that already exist and the story is told, is to create a new one, even if inspired by that story?
Yeah, again, why bother retelling the same story over and over again when you have
Right.
access to the original? The hope is that you would give a different take on the subject matter, and that's ultimately what one would hope. Why spend the money if you're not going to do something interesting?
Yeah, Bill was being attacked by Martians. Those were weird sounds. What
Stop it.
about you? Do you agree with that, Jane? Do you think it's more beneficial to try to make new movies and new stories and stuff that a white person will go to see that is multicultural, not feel that they took something away from them as well, and enjoy your story?
I mean,
Because you're
yeah,
casting.
I think that's something that's kind of important with any movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think something that uh, it can be very corrupting, but I think becomes the more engaging topic is how Hollywood and a major motion picture industry kind of dominates the kind of grasp that we have as an audience and as critics and as people who have our own comments and things to say about how those films go. You know, I think there's a lot to say as to how far film has also gone um, in creating new stories as well. Um, to a point where I'm excited to see what will come ahead. If that kind of answers the question at all.
No, it really does, and I do think that should be the focus. I do think that they should look in trying to tell new stories, to not do this, because you know what? I'm gonna go see a movie regardless who's in it. I wish more people would, without having to argue and fight and create some kind of argument over that film. Which, as much as we're talking about it right now, it's something that's constantly existing lately. But you said something I pointed out on other shows about different topics. We have advanced. You look at those 1920s, 30s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, all the way up to now, and look where movies have gone. I just feel that there's a point where somebody said, fuck the crawl. Let's race to get there. Let's shoot as fast as we can. You know, we were advancing. Movies are definitely more diverse than they ever were. And you're right, Jeremy. It's only about, 60, 70% that are actually diverse right now. But that's, 30, 40% more than it was 60 years ago. Or it seems that way, at least. So I think we're still making that advance, but we're trying so hard. It goes into a lot of other topics, but we're trying to mess with history in a way. We're just doing it through film. We're trying to change things a lot. And instead of creating new stories and showing we have our own merit, the black culture used to have a big argument that white people stole their music and they stole everything for them, which absolutely was true. Is this not kind of doing the same thing with other cultures? Are you taking away from that instead of creating your own? That was the argument for other cultures for a long time.
Right.
That you're taking our stuff and making it your own. Call it a revenge tactic, and I will agree it's a deserved revenge tactic. Because it is something we did. But are we not trying to create equality more and a more universally diverse media? Chrono. Jane.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought you were. I thought you were monologuing.
He was sleeping.
Even
and
Bill,
like,
even
I
Bill.
mean, I feel as though that it's you can make
Hey,
an argument on the
Jane,
other
can you
side of it.
put up your mic? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Ah, is this better?
Yes,
Yes,
much better.
thank you.
Okay. Oh well, here. Is that better? Or is this a much better?
That's
way to
good
go?
right there.
That's
a
right
much better
there.
way to go. I mean, I think you can kind of argue though that there's not been a whole lot of change in that retrospect either, right? Well, hold on, hear me out when I say this.
I'm listening.
I can still think of a good number of films that have come out in the past couple of years that have been directed, produced, casted, and starred by white cis men. You know,
Absolutely.
I guess for me personally, I don't see as though there's a whole lot of regression on one side. It's just an overlapping amount of progression on another side that causes everything to feel smaller on one end than the other. Does that make sense? Kind of closer to what you're saying with this crawl to a race, right? I don't think there's a lack of the being films created with that particular casting in mind. Castings that we've been talking about, but we also have to remember of what a wide range of scope both film and film distribution is, right? Films that we're seeing around here are so different than the kind of films and representation that
Very true,
exists
actually.
all around the place.
I thought you were gone, actually.
Okay,
And I
they
think
are.
that's something to take account in as well.
Well, I'm not saying I disagree highly with what you said about it hasn't changed. Yes, there are still, but what you just said is you said there are still movies being made with primarily a white cast and everybody being white. Still shouldn't be an issue. There should always be, and there should always be allowed to be movies that are all black cast or movies that are always Asian. Still is insinuating exactly that. You're racing that there is no still. So we can eliminate it, which would be my driving point home about what's in it for the future. If you're trying to eliminate. Still is implying that white movies still exist, so we haven't advanced far. That one gets to me a lot because we have advanced very far. Even our new movies, like our Marvel movies, we talked about it before, even those are doing more diverse cultures with it, whether it be with gender or racial or casting appropriately in some cases that they didn't used to do. That's a far advancement. Horror movies, comedies, everything, they're starting to get better. We are getting there. But that's new material. Chrono, what did you have to say about that?
Don't remember. Don't
He's sleeping again. I saw him snoring.
What was the question? I mean,
God, what was the question now?
He doesn't remember either, so.
Jane answered it.
I did my part in answering it. It's your part now.
I said we're talking about the race to it and how quick it was, and then Jane answered with that, saying that doesn't feel that we've come that far, and we haven't done much because they're still making white movies. Before you continue, Jane, I do want to, since I'm reminding the question, I want it fresh in Chrono's head, so he can answer it really quick.
Well, before that, just a little note.
Okay.
I think there might have just been I might have just chosen the wrong wording. I don't think that we're at like a standstill here. Like I believe that there's a lot of really great progression in diversity and acceptance in film and in film culture and in film history. I think what I'm saying is based on the kind of argument that you were saying of lack of representation on the other side. I don't know if that's necessarily much of the case either, of lack of representation on the other side, rather that there is so much more of attention to cause representation from the other angle of it, that it causes such a much bigger imbalance, both in what you see on screen as well as what you see being handled in the writer's room and behind the camera, if that makes sense. Anyway, from there, I
allowed Darius Rucker from Thrasher, and he wasn't monologuing.
Just wanted to make sure.
See? But I honestly, I mean, I very much agree with what Jane said. That I guess again, the problem is that someone is going to be the pendulum is swinging. I mean, there is more representation, and at the same time, the stories from the majority are still being done. I don't know where I was going with that, but yes. But I agree. I agree with elements of what Jane had said.
And you haven't been drinking, Jeremy. Come on.
No. Is it water or is it vodka?
Maybe
who
you
knows?
are. Maybe you are.
Yeah.
Thrasher says, "Can I present a question?" Absolutely, Thrasher.
Please.
And hi, Elena. How you doing?
Hi,
Good to have
Elena.
you here. So Jeremy, do you agree that there hasn't been as much of a movement as Jane said, or do you think that we have gone far? If somebody who is, and I'm asking partly because so many older movies, everything going so far back.
I would like to see more.
I'm not arguing that.
I think where the problem is instead of a discussion on, hey, this is a great thing seeing more representation, you're hearing the negative element saying that, hey, something is being taken away from me.
But is it not? I mean, really, in some ways, is it not being taken away? Even from white culture, I know we're privileged, and we get everything we want, blah, 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 but are you still not taking stuff away? Just as the same, if they redid Fresh Prince with a white cast, white guys go to Philly, would that not have been taking things away? Or something like that? Is it still not taking it away from people?
What is the story or the narrative that is important to tell from a white perspective?
Well, minus like 1 or 2 episodes going with Fresh Prince or something like that. There's not. You could have told that with a white family just as easily.
Could you have?
Yeah. You could
I don't
have.
know.
Yeah, there's certain storylines they had in certain episodes. Obviously, you couldn't have,
but
but they
why
did
not
tackle
just
racism sometimes.
Incorporate some of those ideas and make a new show that's like Fresh Prince, but it's not the Fresh Prince.
Exactly.
Well,
So
why
why
does it
not
have
do
to
it
be
the other
that?
direction as well?
Because again, it becomes a circular argument. You're constantly, and the thing is, what
It's
I'm
Bel
hoping
Air.
for, what I'm striving for, is seeing the more opportunities, more representation, and you're making the counter argument saying, but in doing so, something has to give. And the thing is, again, what I would hope for is to strive for an equilibrium, but in doing so, to swing the pendulum the other way, something is going to have to give. And unfortunately, something, the whiteness or whatever will be lesser. There'll be lesser representation. Does it make that
Lesser white.
No, not at all. I mean, I don't. I believe that as a white person, we do need less representation.
yes,
I do not argue that at all because we do hold the monopoly as far as media goes of that.
but again,
It
there
is
will come
coming
a point.
down really
Yeah,
fast,
yes,
but we do hold that.
but again, one can't exist without the other one, decreasing in a capacity,
I
and
mean,
until that one side is willing to say, hey, stop taking my representation away, this argument is constantly going to be happening in
right. But
terms of, well, I just want to be seen.
the thing is, minority cultures, if I can call them that right now, based on what we're talking about, minority cultures are saying that you're taking our representation away. They are. They're fighting, and they have every right to.
Yeah.
But we can't say that. What I'm saying right now, I could never say in the news or on a huge public forum across the nation or as a
Yeah.
star or celebrity. I could never say that. But you are taking away the representation. It's like having a new girlfriend when you have
Yeah.
10 great friends. You will focus so much on getting this girl and making her happy, you'll ignore your friends, you'll ditch them, you'll forget that you're hurting them and you're harming them in the process.
No, you don't
Before
do
you
that.
know it, shut up, Bill, it's all about girlfriend. Before you know
White
it,
trash Christmas. White trash Christmas.
booted, I need a drink. But before you know it, you have
And
no
I get a
friends
gay
anymore.
friend. Boom.
And when you finally get the girl you want, you realize you've lost everything else. You've lost all your other friends that you used to have because you put them aside and didn't care about their feelings at the same time. So get the representation and take some away from us because God knows, yes, we need it. But don't eliminate it. And the whole point I was making about it was not that you're getting more representation. You deserve far more representation. It's the fact that we are getting no more representation. And a little bit we should still have it because we are adults that grew through this. I'm an adult. Corona, you're an adult. Bill can be an adult sometimes. And Jane,
Once in a
you're
while.
younger. You're still an adult, though. So you're younger, still an adult. So we have been through this, but the young generation hasn't. And they're going to see the same things that other people were seeing. And they're going to feel misrepresented. And I'm afraid in the future it's going to get that way. So I think we need to slow down white representation. Remake some things, do things different ways, recast sometimes. A little bit white's fine. Do a little bit more of the culture, absolutely. So
Well,
that
it's
we do
judgment of
come to
life.
balance it out instead of going, it's been like this, so bam, now it's like this. And that's what seems to be happening.
It's what you do, and it's judgment of life.
Oh,
Right?
for the white
How
trash
the
side.
people. And I got gay friends. Go on, go back there.
Keep going.
How-
We only got a few minutes left
But
here.
it is no, but it's about judgment of life. As Keith knows, right? I was, hung out with a lot of straight friends and shit like that, and then I got gay friends, and then my straight friends stayed away, and it when you're in there and stuff like that, judgment of life has a lot to do with what you do and how you judge everything. So as far as movies and anything else in the world.
What gives the privilege? I'm going to ask Jane this, being a trans person. Do you feel privilege as a white person with that? Do you feel the same? Do you ever feel misrepresentation? Or do you feel because you're trans, you understand the misrepresentation and figure white people don't have any issue? They shouldn't have any issue. Being a white person yourself, but also trans, so you're diverse at the same time. I'm curious.
Oh, I mean,
In short,
I think something that I try to keep in mind all the time is that I do have a certain type of privileges, both as a white person, but both in my ability to pass as a white man. Though I really do my best whenever I can to kind of stem and separate from that as best as I can these past couple of years, or more likely this past year, to be honest. So I would say I do face that a lot through what it is being like as a trans woman. Though I would still say that I have some privilege as a white person, regardless of that I haven't faced those type of issues as say someone of a person of color or different ethnicity has faced. I would say it all comes from it stems from difference in how a person's being attacked. Though I would say it's still that kind of be attacking regardless that is still bad, no matter how you slice it.
I agree. I agree with you though. I agree the attacking is bad. I don't think there's really, like Jeremy said, there's not really a right or wrong answer. It's just a chance to expose how you feel and get counter arguments to how you're feeling and what you're doing. Maybe understand the other side a little bit, no matter which side you happen to be on. Is to learn from that. Go through a few comments, then our last question tonight because
No
I do have
matter
to
if
get
you're
out of
white
here.
trash or not. So.
Yep. Elena says, wish I could have been soon here, but the car dealership was for so long. I hope you got the car. She was shopping for a car. That's why she wasn't on this panel. So I want to say I hope you got it. We can always use more representation and file with I agree, Keith. White, straight people have always had representation. POC and LGBTQ plus have not always. Let's switch focus. And that's a good way to say it too. I do believe switching focus is a good thing, but when you switch focus, don't put all your focus into one, which was my argument. I do believe we got to put more focus on the cultural castings and acceptability and representation in media. But yeah, it feels like to me a lot of times they're trying so hard to do that they're overblowing it, and they're forgetting that we're still here too. The white straight male is still here too. I say we. I'm not a white straight male, but I say we are still here too. But
Somebody's here.
But as far as maybe racial or gender,
And the
that
white
we are
trash
still here, and
Christmas is here.
we don't deserve none. We don't deserve no representation. We don't deserve everything taken away from us. And the same token, Jeremy, you don't deserve it. Ever having anything taken away. As a trans, you don't deserve it, Jane. As a bigot, you don't deserve it. I'm just kidding. You're not a bigot in any way. I love you.
Bigots have stories too, damn it.
I am me.
Nobody
Keith. I'm always
deserves
gonna be
it.
Me. I'm always me. I'm always going to be me, and I was always going to say white trash Christmas, and I have a gay friend.
Right.
So boom.
That's too. But anyway, it really is the point. Nobody deserves it, and I think the fight that you guys are fighting, and rightfully you have the fight, that the majority, the groups who are against this, not the individual, are forgetting that we still deserve. We're part of this world with you. We may be a majority, but we're still a human being and an individual. And don't forget about us either. Just like you were forgotten about a lot of growing up there, and I don't want to feel like you felt. I don't want to know that feeling. I'll be honest with you, because I know it's not a good feeling, Jeremy. Seeing all that misrepresentation, but we didn't do it. We're trying to get through it and join together. And I wish that sometimes people would not forget that aspect. Elena says she's got a car. Didn't bring it home today. Will be in a few weeks. Congratulations. All right. Thrasher took his mask off. He was a Martian all along. And now for Thrasher's question that he was going to ask. And this is going to be the final question we're going to address. I do have somewhere to be. I will have to be going. It says, I understand that underrepresented peoples may not like media that has been traditionally made for white people, especially when it's meant to relate to white people. I see a lot of white people being labeled as phobes when they admit, this just wasn't meant for me, so I didn't enjoy it. And I'm not talking about any moron who says hate speech. That was actually a good way to put that. And for the record, Uncle Phil is the greatest TV dad of all time. This from a guy who didn't have a dad. He was my TV dad. And that goes back a little bit. I was trying to think of things in the process, and brain farting a lot this show. Too much drugs. But Fresh Prince, the reason I brought it up was the same token I brought up earlier about watching like Bruce Lee and all that. It was a great show. I never thought I wasn't represented by color. I saw myself being Will. I saw myself being several different people in different shows like that. And maybe it was just me, and maybe it does have to do with somehow how I was raised or something like that. But not that anybody was raised bad, but just that it never appropriated me. It never appropriated to me like, oh, this guy isn't white, I don't want to watch it. He was like, my dad too. I didn't have a dad either, Thrasher, and I related to him more than like anybody else. And so I have a hard time seeing and say, hey, this has got to be. So I will agree. I don't see all the misrepresentation you get. And maybe it wasn't as much of a question as wanting all of your viewpoints. So what are your viewpoints on that? Going around, starting with Jane.
Can you pull it back up?
He says, I understand that underrepresented peoples may not like the media that has been traditionally made for white people, especially when it's meant to relate to white people. I see a lot of white people being labeled as foes when they admit this just wasn't for me, so I did enjoy it. I'm not talking about any moron who says hate speech. And then, for the record, Uncle Phil was the greatest TV dad of all time.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's something that happens a lot. Whether it be something involving movies or sports or television or whatever. I feel as though especially in media and on sites like Twitter and other social medias, you're going to get that a lot. I think because a lot of people have a lot of security in those types of one-word type of like answers. To kind of penetrate through people's point of view when it seems as though those types of viewpoints or films or perspectives are being challenged in some sort of way. And I think that kind of undercuts the whole point of the other side of the argument as well and causes there to be an issue where any kind of discussion about it leads into it becoming a harsh argument where I think both sides are not being understood as they should be.
I mean, in general, everybody on this panel, whether we're white, Asian, trans, Bill, we all want to be represented regularly, but we want to equally be represented with you. And I think I'm not saying that just for white people. I'm talking about, I do believe deep down, Chrono, you just want to be equally represented. I don't think you want the majority. I don't think that Jane wants trans to have the majority. I think she wants equal representation. And I think that's something we all think about, is the equality. What about you, Bill? What do you have to say on that comment?
Well, what you said earlier and stuff like that, the only thing I think about, like when you talked about Fresh Prince and stuff like that, and you're talking about you look at them and say, I don't look at them as that, where I can't be that person and stuff like that. And it's funny, and it may be disrespected, but Carlton dancing the Tom Jones dance. So.
True,
It's
and
the greatest
Thrasher
shit in the
says
world.
it too.
It's the greatest shit in the world. I mean,
It was.
Will Smith has went into Graham Norton's show over in England and stuff, and flew what the hell's his name, Rivera over there, and had him show up on the show. Graham Norton didn't even know it, and they went out there and sang and danced and everything like that, and it was good.
And Thrasher commented back on, I'm not black or in a rich family. I felt like I was part of the family. And that goes back to Jeremy's defense, because that was good writing. That was a good show. That was something that was made to appeal to just everybody, rather than just saying, hey, we've got to have a black. They were daring to kind of do that show,
Well, they cut up and got on top of the Bill Cosby show when Bill Cosby show was already going down the hill. So.
And finally, to Jeremy on that, your viewpoint.
I truly think that when it comes to media, whether it be movies, TV, books, video games, whatever, universality is important. Being able to see something as a whole, the broader, broader points, being able to feel, even if you're not a part of that particular grouping. Ultimately, though, it's being as a part of that particular group, it becomes also more important when you start seeing the things that, as a member of that grouping, that only you could see and appreciate and get a deeper understanding for. And I think that, with the Fresh Prince example, there's a universality that comes with the story that was being told. But being a black person, it hit harder. And that's important.
And I think that is where you need. I think that's the balance people need. I think you nailed that right there. That was for the Fresh Prince. And
to
really,
be fair, I'm not a black person. Just so you know. Yeah.
I have not called you a black person.
No, I realized after I said it out loud. I said,
he's obviously Puerto Rican Jew, so yeah. So am I. It's okay. I am too. So
you're ridiculous. For this final word, I'm going to let two. You weren't ready for that. I'm going to let Jane and Chrono give the final words tonight. So, what do you want to close with? Because you guys have a bigger relation to this topic than anybody. So,
I mean, I guess the most important thing.
I get to say nothing. Hell,
you're white and you're male and straight.
I guess the important thing is
I'm Puerto Rican Jew. Damn it.
Go and see those type of films. Support the type of films that you want to go and see. Support the kind of filmmakers that you want to see and represent the kind of stories that you want to tell. And I think in the end of the day too, we have to remember that with film, with this industry, whether it be remakes or recasting or whatever it is, that it is a tough industry, but it is something that is both very important and something that should also be seen as an enjoyable experience, both from the filmmaking aspects of it as well as being an audience member. If something just didn't agree with you or that you didn't enjoy it, that's okay. Not everything is made for everyone, and I think that's something that we all have to remember too. When we go and see something, the latest blockbuster film, or the film that all of our friends are going and talking about and saying is going to be the next Oscar winner, sometimes it's just not for you, and that's okay. Does that mean that you have to be denounced for how you feel? No. And does that mean that you're deplatformed for saying about what you thought about it, even if with what you think is controversial or that you don't agree with it? No, I would say not necessarily. And I think that's something that no matter where you are in this debate, that I think is very important to keep in mind, because in the end of the day, we all just want that kind of strong community.
I agree. And what about you, Chrono?
I wish you'd warned me that they're.
Welcome to Ear Shoulder Voice.
No, I completely agree with what James said. Support those that are telling the stories that you want to hear. And also not everything is made for you. But I think it's also important to ask yourself why. What is it about it that is so that you can't find the perspective, and seeing, as opposed to seeing it as if something is being taken away. Celebrate the fact that people are finally getting a voice. I think that's an important thing to take.
I agree. Now my turn because it's my show.
Now he monologues.
Now I don't monologue because everything you said is right. That's good for a final word. The only thing I can really say is, above anything else, the one thing we didn't hit on and to remember, movies are entertainment. They're meant to be enjoyed. They're meant to be loved. They're meant to be revered. Not everything, like you said, is for everyone. But see them as entertainment. If you get too focused on stuff like that, you end up losing the quality of the movie and the effort that everybody, the thousands of people, put into that movie to make it a good experience for you, because you're focused on one minute detail. Enjoy the movie for what it is. Movies have always been about entertainment, whether they're telling a basic story, biography, whether it's a drama, a horror, comedy, adventure, sci-fi, musical, whatever it happens to be. Go and see it on the merit of the movie. Good filmmaking is something that shouldn't die. And if you let it die, then the world is going to be no better off. We're going to lose one of the greatest industries we have. And we got two people here that thrive on that industry. One makes them, the other one tells them how they did it wrong. So,
Well, let you decide who's who.
yes, exactly. But yeah, just make sure that you always remember you got to enjoy life. You got to have fun with things. If you spend your time bitching about everything, you're going to become a bitter, miserable person. And nobody wants to be that. They're not going to enjoy life and everything it has to offer. Today's topic was, of course, playing the part. Should age, race, gender, sexuality play a part in actor portrayals? And absolutely, sometimes they should, and sometimes they're not necessary. I think we all came to that conclusion. Don't forget, we have our open forum coming up this Sunday, as we try to do most Sundays. Not every Sunday, because it just doesn't work that way. But that's where we talk about anything, current events, and I've got a lot of shit to talk about. We've been off for a while, so we're going to be hitting a lot of stuff on that open forum. That is current events. Our next topic coming up also has to do with current events, though. That's going to be Wednesday, called Everybody Shoot. That topic is going to be about gun issues and stuff like that. We are not going to talk about necessarily the politics behind it. We're going to talk about our actual feelings, how we feel about that situation, why it's important to us to get rid of or keep them, and we're going to discuss it as a regular panel without having the heated debates and one-sidedness you see in the media. We're going to try to just talk as regular people on that, and that's going to be a deep topic, especially with a lot of the stuff that's happening. Don't forget, you can reach out to us anytime, anywhere. Just go to earshouldervoice.com or our meta page, and you can talk to us there at the website. You can do it anonymously if you wish, or you can join the social media group there, which really isn't really a social media group. It's just a few people on the website. But still, if you go on there, we'll be there. We're building that up where you can talk about anything. Your voice needs to be heard. There are no judgments. You are never wrong about what you say unless you're Bill. So feel free to say whatever you want. That's why we're here. That's why we thrive.
I am never wrong.
And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow so you can be notified of our new shows that we have on Sundays and Wednesdays here at 7. Thank you, Chrono, for being here. Absolutely fantastic having you. If there's ever any show, definitely about movies or anything like that, I definitely want you here. But I'd like you here for the other shows, too. But you are just so insightful. You know so much about that stuff. And you give every movie, those who have never followed him, he is a great reviewer, and he gives every movie such a fair, versed response. Like, he looks from every angle of a movie, says what's good, what's bad.
You need to get a job and quit watching shows all the time.
That is his job, and if that was his job, he'd still be watching them. That's why he reviews them.
It all works out.
It does. Bill, always good to have you here. Thank you for making me drink a little more than I planned. I always appreciate that because, you know, those terms, I need them.
White Trash Christmas. White Trash Christmas.
That's right. That's right. So I want to thank you for being here. As always, I know you miss these shows. We love having you on every time. And Jane,
I do.
Jane, our movie maker, we love having you as well. And I liked a lot of what you had to say there. And I always like your arguments because you tend to agree and disagree with each person independently. You're not stuck to one side. You're always giving fair viewpoints on stuff. And I appreciate that a lot when you come on this show.
Thank you.
And I got a good friend.
Yes.
I'm happy to always be here to hear it all. And thank you for having me on. And happy Pride Month.
Yep. All right. So you guys take care and have a good one. We will see you all later. Bye.
Drink more.
When you're alone and feeling down, and you're 10 feet underground, when you're so deep you're about to drown, when you're in the lost and found, 'cause heartaches only last a day. Ooh, but your heart will never fade away. Go out and find your way. Don't let them take your soul away. Not a week, not a single day. Hold true to what you wanna be. Never let go, and here's the key. Be you, yeah, only you. Only you. Be you, yeah, only you. Only you.
Hello, hello, hello. Good job, people. You did so
Fun show.
well. It was fun. It was fun. I still sometimes hate being the, devil's advocate on this shit.
You did really well.
Well,
though.
someone has to direct it, the conversation.
Well, the thing is, that's I guess a good thing. A lot of times I hear so many arguments. And I have to, whether I agree with sides or not, and I agree with a lot of what I said as well. I do believe there's an issue there somewhat. As I get to hear it, and whether I agree or not, a lot of times they come up with good points. Like, I don't look and I'm like, I didn't really agree with your stance, but that's a really good point. I can see how you feel that way. Who's here? That's the funnest job. All right, so what'd you think? Jeremy, we need you more.
Yeah, we'll have you back around.
Like I said, I appreciate having lots of fun doing this stuff. If only I can monetize this. How about paying some? How about sending some cheddar my way?
I
I
can't
need
monetize
him
it.
to get a.
I run it.
Hold on,
I
I need
can't
him-
monetize it.
I need
What's that?
him to get a job so he has money so he can buy my comic books and everything like that. So
You still haven't bought those?
It's still back on that, eh?
So I have a
they're
question,
still
actually.
sitting here. I haven't went through. I'm still trying to get out of the house. So
All right, go ahead, Jane.
This question Bill's actually gonna like. With it being Pride Month, this might be the month more than ever for the sex show. Now might be the time more than ever.
You're kidding me, right? Oh my God, I'm gonna hit that up on Sunday. No, because it's your month. It's not the time we do the sex show. And you know what? No, we're not gonna talk about gay sex all day.
Bill, help me out here. Bill.
No, Bill's
I'm
actually.
sorry, I couldn't hear it, but
No, I'm saying like with it being Pride Month, now's the time for the sex show.
I don't see the correlation there. I'm like,
That's why I'm leaving it to Bill. Bill, go on here. I've set you up. Knock him down.
Jane, if you go into ESV and you look down through there and say what you want to have a show for, all you have to do is touch it, boom, 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 and go down to there, and Keith will look at it like a month later, and then you'll figure it out. So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there is actually a poll for topics you want. You can add your own and stuff like that too if you want to hear us discuss them. Every month was Sex Month. It is for a lot of us. Apparently, just June for Jane.
just so you know, Jane,
I feel bad for 11 months out of the year for her.
Keith avoids that all the damn time. So because it's a sex show, so.
It's good for the prostate, and it feels so damn good. Anyway, moving on. Not gonna lie. All right. Well,
Hey,
I don't know how we just did this show, and we still ended up talking about the sex show on Pride Month. I don't
You're
really
welcome.
see how
I
we
could have gotten
I
in the
did that
middle of
for
that.
you, Bill. I did that for.
I could have gotten in the middle of it before that. So Keith, the girls are coming into town. You work at the bar Friday or Saturday night?
I'm at Kit Kat.
Kit Kat? Which night?
Friday and Saturday.
Well,
Oh, not
all right.
Saturday. After this week, I won't be there on Saturdays at all for the summer.
Moist.
So you'll be there Friday night.